his music-making operations, The Onion spoke with veteran factory worker Travis Felton, who received a pink slip earlier today.
I've been working on the lyric assembly line for 25 years now. Punch in each and every morning, make sure the words are complex and poetic. And yesterday, the foreman calls me into his office to tell me that the company is reducing headcount. They're giving the whole rhyming section the boot. What Mr. Dillon and the other suits don't understand is that here in Muscatine, songwriting is all we have. And we've been doing the best damn Dylan songs in the world for over 50 years, and now they're trying to take that away from us. I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. Well, I guess I could see if they're hiring over at the Tom Petty factory in Hurstville. Lord knows I hoped it'd never come to that.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio you can call in at 603-283-6160. Tonight in the studio is Lori.
And Mr. Penguin.
And we've got some techie stories to get to today involving, I have some involving AI, some involving government overreach in IP law. Chris, you have some tech type stories as well, I think.
Yeah, at least a couple. I'm not sure exactly which ones we're going to cover, but I got one on Telegram, and they're snooping at your data some more, or releasing your data to governments, I should say, I guess, and some other interesting ones. Under
threat of violence, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
As is the tradition.
Yep, the founder was arrested here recently, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we already have a call, so we're going to start off the night with going right to the phones because this is a call-in show. We have Matthew. Hi, Matthew.
Hey, I was just calling. I was hoping Aria was going to be on because I have a tech-related thing to bring up, and that's that she brought up a couple weeks ago that she was using incognito mode, and then somehow they were still knowing what she searched for otherwise. That's because the advertising companies are smarter than the people that they're snooping on, and so what they'll do is that the incognito mode doesn't save cookies to your machine, and it doesn't retain the history, but on the other side, the server side, they know your monitor resolution, the operating system you're using, and a whole bunch of other things, and they're able to actually associate that with the advertiser ID that they maintain for you to serve you content from the server side. So it's not a problem with the incognito mode. It's because it's the fact that you have to be much more aggressive in maintaining anonymity online.
Yeah, I believe those are called super cookies that you're referring to, I think.
Yes, but the thing is they're not on your machine, so there's no way to, it's not like you can delete them or clear your settings or do anything on the machine to prevent them because all that information, like the operating system IP address, monitor resolution, things like that, that's all visible on the server side, so the cookies aren't even on your computer. It's in the advertiser's computers.
Yeah, I was never under the impression that incognito was actually like protecting me in any way, except for the fact that other people in my literal physical space couldn't see what I had done in the past.
I think it's more about not retaining the history and the cookies and things like that, more so than anything. But depending on the browser, it's not necessarily like, for example, it's not in Google creates Chrome, and it's not in Google's interest to they're an advertising company, so it's not in their interest to actually make it, privacy friendly.
Right.
So you have to keep some of these things in mind.
Well, I mean, even if you're using Mozilla, any sort of Mozilla product, which is still a derivative of Chromium, but regardless of which, it's pretty much impossible for you to get away from it unless you're using a different machine or a VPN to keep confusing the way that they sort those advertiser IDs.
So, so Mozilla is not based on Chromium. It's one of the, it's got its own rendering engine. But there are other browsers that are based on Chromium. I believe Brave is an example of that. I always thought Brave was based on Firefox, but it's not. It's based on Chromium. But the developer who who develops Brave came from Mozilla. So oddly, but
I don't know anything about any of this stuff. I am not techie. I just assume that everything I'm using is corrupted in some way or corruptible in some way, and so I just assume that I can be spied on if I want to.
Yeah, I mean, if you really need privacy, what you probably want to be using is something called Tor browser, and then there's a whole lot more that they do besides just you're not just in incognito mode. You're in a the whole thing is designed around basically having the same screen size as everybody and the same resolution as everybody else and the same plugins, and basically everything is the same when you use that browser from one machine to the next. So that's the goal anyway, and thus it eliminates the ability of advertisers and other adversaries to be able to track you from one machine. Well, I guess from one session to another.
Anything else,
Yep.
Matthew?
No, well, I think, Laura, your approach is probably the best because at some point the effort required to maintain anonymity it gets to be too great, and I don't want to say if you're not doing anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about, but it's just like what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to make sure that they can't see the naughty searches that you do, or are you trying to keep yourself safe? And if it's the naughty searches, just deal with it and hope that they serve you up exactly what you want.
Well, and tech is a constant arms race between the people that want to spy on you and you who doesn't want to be spied on. And so I just assume that everything can be corrupted. Even if I'm using something that they say I can't be spied on, I'm going to assume that, there's probably some way that they could.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you guys might be giving a little bit too much credit to Big Brother. Despite that,
they hire hackers. Like they just hire people who know how to get around these things.
I mean, the problem is that there are certainly flaws out there that can be taken advantage of, but like nobody's hacking into your specific machine really. It's more like, if you've kept your system up to date and so forth, unless you're a substantial or significant target. If you're the vice chancellor of Germany is the example I always like to give, you probably can't do a whole lot to protect yourself. But, if you're just a nobody, then there's actually are steps you can take. And the question is, what steps, how far do you want to go? Because, with each step, there are consequences. So it is going to be harder to use the internet with Tor browser than it is going to be to use the web with Firefox. But there's also something called LibreWolf, which is basically a web browser that undoes all the bad things that Mozilla has done. It may not be as privacy friendly as Tor browser, but you also don't have the headaches that might come with Tor browser. Like, for example, maybe you won't be able to access Reddit with the Tor browser. Well, you will be able to with LibreWolf.
I feel like in the current political privacy climate that we live in, even if you're a nobody, like that doesn't mean you're going to remain a nobody, because everything is becoming something that they want to punish you for now, like any kind of speech or any kind of, you're doing something not within the Federal Reserve note system that they want you to work in. So just because you're a nobody doesn't mean that you shouldn't be thinking that you're potentially a target at some point.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Anything else, Matt?
No, have a good show.
Thanks. So I have a story that I would like to go into. This is from Ars Technica, and it's Pirate Library must pay publishers $30 million, but nobody knows who runs it. Which is really fun.
I love the library guys. I'm trying to think if I made a donation to them or not. I very well may have made a donation to the library.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry. This isn't library. I'm sorry. Who is it? The pirate.
It's Torrent Freak.
No, that's the article. Who's behind the library?
Yeah, Torrent Freak. The article is from Ars Technica.
Okay, so Torrent Freak is a news website that covers piracy-related subjects.
Hold on.
Ars Technica is also a news outlet, so they're referencing Torrent Freak in the Ars Technical story is what's going on there.
Again. I haven't read this. I just saw the headline and I was like,
well, why don't you get into it and we'll find out.
So it says, on Thursday, some links to the notorious shadow library Genesis, LibGen, So that's the one.
Yeah. Okay.
Genesis.
So LibGen. So I think there's a couple of them out there, and that may or may not be one that I've contributed to financially, but I did probably with cryptocurrency. So and this is one of the reasons that it's important to have support for things like cryptocurrency, is because then people can actually make contributions without the government seizing your donations.
Right. Yet. So they couldn't be reached after a U.S. District Court Judge Colleen McMahon ordered what Torrent Free called one of the broadest anti-piracy injunctions ever issued by a U.S. court. In her order, McMahon sided with textbook publishers who accused LibGen of willful copyright infringement after LibGen completely ignored their complaint. To compensate right holders, McMahon ordered LibGen to pay $30 million, but because nobody knows who runs the Shadow Library, it seems unlikely that publishers will be paid anytime soon, if ever. Because LibGen's admins remain anonymous and elusive and previously avoided paying a different set of publishers $15 million in 2017, McMahon granted publishers' requests for an uncommonly broad injunction that may empower publishers to go further than ever to destroy the Shadow Library. Under the injunction, not only is LibGen banned from sharing copyrighted content, but so are all those in active concert or participation with anyone connected to LibGen. The order forbids anyone from hosting LibGen, registering LibGen domains, or providing cloud storage, file sharing, or advertising services, among other restrictions. Even using tools to display links or enabling browser extensions linking to LibGen is forbidden under the order.
What seems so, people seem to fail, courts and individuals and even lawyers so often fail to understand that, like, they have whatever the courts decide is limited in terms of its jurisdiction. It may not even have jurisdiction. Mm-hmm. And not responding to an order may be, or maybe sort of a recognition that they don't have jurisdiction, right?
Yeah. Not only that, it's fun to be like, whatever.
Right. So just because you have an order for something, that order might be applicable against, let's take this exact case. It may be applicable against U.S. domain registers and registries, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's applicable against, some Iranian domain register, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't necessarily apply. And the same thing goes with, they're not operating necessarily in the United States. So the jurisdiction of the United States is limited. It doesn't, a lot of people think it's worldwide, but that's actually not the case. There are places that don't have copyright laws. There are places that don't have, other types of IP laws. So it really is, if a country, I don't advocate for this, but if a country really wants to say, stop its population from accessing this pirate website, then it basically what they have available, their tools wise, is basically blocking, but blocking is not that effective. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, okay, maybe you need to rethink copyright laws, because they never did what they were advertised to do in the first place, which they were sold to the public as a means of advancing scientific research and the arts, and they were supposed to be for a limited period of time, and that period of time was 7 years, and so it was for the benefit of the public. It was for the public good.
What is it now? It's 90 years or something.
It's 120 or more years. It kind of
keeps going up.
Yeah, it kind of depends. So it depends on a number of different factors, but a corporation is it's something like 70 years plus it's something like 70 years plus the life of the author or something like that. But
then they
if
just
it's an
keep
individual,
renewing them too. Disney renews them over and over again.
But it's it might be 120 years if it's a corporation or something like that. But like I said, it depends. And I think there is there is I don't know, I'm not 100% sure of the details, but there may be a renewal in there. So maybe it's the life of the author, but if it doesn't get renewed, then it does expire sooner than if it gets renewed. But if it gets renewed, it's another 70 years. So.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a problem that I think they're pretty upset about, the fact that they didn't foresee this coming with giving the people the internet.
Yeah, so. This is definitely a problem created. It's definitely an internet. It's definitely a problem that was certainly increased with the internet. Right?
Yeah, everybody has access to each other and data sharing all over the world pretty much freely. And now with all of these IP laws they're trying to enact, there's so many ways around it for the individual there's no way to stop it. Like the only way to stop it would be to take down the internet. That would be it.
Yeah, and like let's just take a look at an example of blocking, because that's something that a lot of countries do. They have these censorship lists and they block websites. Well, one of the problems with this is that you can't block some websites, because if you do, you also take down half the internet. I'm trying to think of an example of that, and I'm trying to think what website recently. I think, what was it, Telegram? No, it was X, actually, I believe. I think it was X. So Twitter. Twitter was blocked in Brazil. But the problem is that Twitter started using what's called a CDN, a content delivery network, which basically means that they're sharing an IP address with many other websites, right?
Okay.
So
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, so it is, and there's something called share hosting. That's the same thing, but usually shared hosting would be like for small websites. But a CDN hosts, millions of websites, right? It literally hosts, like, one CDN alone called Cloudflare basically hosts like half the internet, right? And I'm not sure 100% how accurate my statistic is there, but it's close enough, right? So if you try to block X, you literally have like cut off half the websites on the internet. So it's not something you can do, practically speaking, unless companies like Cloudflare are willing to work with you.
Like even North Korea has a pretty big stranglehold on its people's data, and they still get it. Like people still get things that are illegal.
Yeah. So they have, Are you talking about like the balloons they send over the border?
Yeah.
And
we will get it. Like if people want something, they will get it. It's almost impossible to stop. I don't think that they can stop the internet at this point. It's gone way too far. Everyone has it. Everyone has it in their pocket on multiple devices. But all of the IP laws and like free speech laws, they want to like take away free speech from people saying things that might hurt each other's feelings and things like that. Like it's just not going to work. Yeah.
If you give them just a little bit, it just keeps going, because we end up with a tyrannical system, because ultimately you can't achieve this censored world without undermining everything else.
Right.
And people have, I think, to some degree already encountered this. Even with just normal government censorship lists or filtering that many Western nations have implemented for other purposes, have ended up with politicians' websites on them, and things that are like, hey, wait a minute, that shouldn't be there. How did that get there? And this is not just something that happens, in Iran or in China, or Russia. This is something that happens in Western countries. I forget which, I forget if it was like Canada or Australia, but there's definitely countries out there where it's become known. And often these lists are not publicly available. Like in Germany, for example, we don't know what websites are blocked unless you actually try to go to the website and you discover that it's blocked.
Right.
So we don't even know. We can't even examine these lists. It's a very, very dangerous thing especially for any kind of democracy.
Right.
So. And
like freedom of information and freedom of speech are vastly important to humanity. And the fact that they're trying to block things like this for, I don't even know, the greater good, I guess, would be their reasoning.
Well, it's not for the greater good.
No,
it's for a very subset of the population, like politicians and copyright holders.
Yes. Right. Yeah. They're greater
a minority.
Good. They're greater good. Not the humans, who are the majority of the country.
Yeah. It's for
the majority of the world.
It's absolutely 100% for a minority's benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even for a minority's benefit that is of need. It's for a minority's benefit of the elite, basically.
Right.
So they might try to bring out little artists as, the reason. But in the real world, it's not the little artists that have any ability to, cause websites to get onto copyright lists, filters or censorship lists. It's the big guys who have that power.
Right. Yeah.
And so this idea that, this idea that it's somehow helping the little guys is that's just the sales pitch by the cartels, which there's I think there's there's even less now today, but there's about 7 or 8 basically studios that exist, major studios in the United States that exist. So like one of whatever video or movie or content TV show that you see on television is produced by a very, very small or the ownership of it is owned by a very, very small subset of companies.
Right.
And there's been mergers here actually too over the years. So it's getting smaller and smaller. And the same thing with radio stations and newspapers. It used to be that you couldn't own more than, a handful of newspapers or TV stations or radio stations, but that's no longer true. They've eliminated those restrictions. So now they've basically I can't tell you who exactly, but there's just a handful of companies or entities that own basically like all the radio stations in the United States. It's really, really, really messed up.
The news stations one, you can see that one in action. Have you seen those videos where it's like all of the anchors saying literally word for word the exact same phrase?
Yeah.
It's insane.
And a lot of that is probably because they're, effectively their bosses.
It's the same guy.
It's all coming from the top down. There are literal scripts in terms of all sorts of things, and you may notice this if you start looking at like different reports on different like crimes, for example. It's literally a fill in the blank. Okay, the name of the person, this is the crime, and this is, and it's like there's literally no, okay, well, what did the lawyer have to say? What did the person who was accused have to say? And they're advised not to speak to the public. So we only ever hear one side of the story whenever you hear anything, anything that's about any kind of case that's criminal. For the most part, there's some rare exceptions with maybe activists like the Crypto 6 case or whatnot, but almost never do we hear, what the actual other side is. And often it's not what, the prosecution is claiming. And often, especially as we saw in the Crypto 6 case, but it's not just the Crypto 6 case, that the story is very different, that they're telling, and the evidence doesn't even back up the story that the government is telling. Yeah. And the only way you would know that is if you were able to witness the trial. But how many people have witnessed a trial, period, let alone, and then do they let you film? They don't in federal court. In state court, they do. But how would you even know if the federal government is doing what it's supposed to be doing?
Well, you can know now because you can, listen to specific podcasts. You can go to independent media companies. Like, people are still doing real actual journalism, but you have to seek them out. You cannot go with mainstream media news, or you're going to get spoon-fed.
Sometimes. But you have to remember, most cases don't even make it to trial, especially at the federal level. It's something like 97% get pled out, and of those
97%.
Yeah, it's something like 97% get pled out. People take a guilty plea for
that makes sense, though, because like going up against the federal government, what are your chances that you're even going to win?
Well, when there's tens of millions of dollars going to prosecute you, and you've got literally a single lawyer to defend yourself that probably is underpaid, and
might even be
what chance do you have? A court-appointed, underpaid lawyer. Right. What chance do you have of winning, even if you are 100% in the right? They don't have the technology to analyze the phone to determine, you weren't at the location that the government claims you were, because the technology the government used is not as accurate. And they have the technology, but they're not willing to investigate to that degree because it's not to their benefit, it's only to your benefit.
Right. It doesn't support their story.
Right.
603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Hey, you are going to love the movie Victimless Crime Spree. It's hilarious, heartwarming, and carries a ton of inspiring freedom messages. Feeling down about the lack of liberty in your life? You need to put on this film with some friends and have a good laugh. It's a true story about me and my friends in New Hampshire living free, singing, dancing, and getting arrested. Of course, it's all on video, and the bad guys, the cops, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs, they all play their part like it's out of a movie or something. You would think we scripted the whole thing, but it's real life. Go ahead and have a watch, and if it's been a while, have another look. I guarantee you'll notice things now that you didn't notice before. And the best part is that you're going to walk away feeling a renewed sense of your own power. You are the master of your destiny, and you will be free in your lifetime. Victimless Crime Spree.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. More than 110 people are known to have died, and at least 600 people are missing across multiple US states after Hurricane Helene. President Joe Biden says he plans to visit areas hit in the coming days, but does not want his trip to delay getting supplies to the affected people.
There's nothing like wondering, is my husband, wife, son, daughter, mother, father alive? And many more who remain without electricity, water, food, and communications. Homes and businesses have washed away in an instant. I want them to know we're not leaving until the job is done. I also want you to know I'm committed to traveling to the impacted areas as soon as possible, but I've been told that it would be disruptive if I did it right now. We will not do that at the risk of diverting or delaying any of the response assets needed to deal with this crisis.
The United Nations Security Council has approved the extension of a multinational security support mission to Haiti for another year. The Council had already authorised a Kenyan-led international security mission to assist the Caribbean country to help restore order against the ongoing gang violence last year. On Monday, the United States requested the mission be changed to a full-blown peacekeeping operation, but China and Russia opposed that move. Jody Jacobs reports from the United Nations in New York.
After more than 6 drafts of the resolution, it was finally put to a vote and adopted unanimously in the Security Council on Monday morning. The contentious issue was a paragraph asking for a plan to transform the security mission into a formal UN peacekeeping operation. But this received backlash from China and Russia, who say the environment in Haiti is not conducive for a fully fledged peacekeeping operation. The current security mission to Haiti, while authorized by the UN Security Council, is not a United Nations operation, and countries voluntarily provide money and personnel. Haitian leaders last week warned of the worsening insecurity in the country despite the partial deployment of the security mission. It supports the US request for a peacekeeping operation. Jody Jacobs, New York.
The man accused of plotting to kill former US President Donald Trump at his Florida golf course has pleaded not guilty to 5 criminal counts, including attempting to assassinate a major presidential candidate. US correspondent Kate Fisher reports.
58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ruth faces 5 charges, including the assassination attempt, gun charges, and assaulting an officer. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. US Secret Service agents spotted the barrel of his high-powered rifle in the bushes outside the Trump International Golf Club on September the 15th. They fired at him before he fled the scene. He did not fire any shots, but law enforcement say his weapon was loaded with 11 rounds of ammunition. Kate Fisher.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. Call in at 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. With fees of less than a penny per transaction, Dash is made for spending. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol and in multi-crypto wallets. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. In the studio is Lori.
And Mr. Penguin.
So we were talking about this article where LibGen was ordered to shut down, but they don't know who runs it. It goes on to say, but even under such broad injunction, the question remains whether publishers can succeed in taking down LibGen, which openly informs users that using its platform violates copyright laws and encourages them to pirate books anyway. It is illegal to download, make copies of material that is protected by copyright, LibGen's 2023 video said. However, all that is illegal is not criminal. For the average person, generally there won't be any criminal consequences under copyright law from having pirated items on your computer. Publishers are potentially already succeeding in taking down some of LibGen's links that enable vast infringement. Yesterday, Torrent Freak reported that None of the LibGen sites targeted in publishers' complaint were down, but as of Thursday, some links couldn't be reached, timing out while loading, or generating a 403 error denying access. The majority of links, including the primary domain, remain online, though. Yeah, I don't think they're going to... Like, even if they stop it, something else will take its place.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, they're not actually taking it down LibGen anyway, because it's going to be available on the Tor Tor Onion node, which is basically if you have a Tor browser, you could still access it. They just can't shut that down because they don't know where their servers are. They don't know who hosts it. And it's got a domain name that isn't censorable. Like a traditional domain name they can take down, and that's what they're basically relying on in order to, take it down. Right. But that's in quotes because they're not able to take the site off permanently.
Right.
They're only able to take it away from being seen by as many people or having as easy access to it.
Okay, that makes sense. As Torrent Freak noted, it's possible that most of the LibGen links remain online because the order is just 2 days old. In the order, McMahon gave registrars of LibGen domains 21 business days to either transfer domains to publishers' control or otherwise implement technical measures such as holding, suspending, or canceling the domain name to ensure the domain names cannot be used for further copyright infringement. Torrent Freak suggested that completely eliminating LibGen has been extremely difficult for years, though partly because the identities of those running it remains unknown. The site, known for closely monitoring file sharing online, only considered publishers' most recent victory a win on paper. That's all it is. If they are not getting anything out of it because there's no way to know who to get anything from.
Yeah, I believe the people who are behind it, they believe to be, no, it wasn't reported in this story, but it's believed that they're in the Middle East somewhere in a country that isn't cooperative with extradition anyway, and probably isn't going to be very respective of copyright in the first place.
Right.
So even if they did know who it was and where it was, they probably would have a near impossible time actually getting it shut down anyway from that perspective. There are certain countries like Vietnam, for example, who up until at least recently were basically bulletproof as far as being able to take something down that was hosted in Vietnam, because the Vietnam government didn't cooperate. The authorities didn't cooperate with copyright, even though they're part of the Convention on Copyright. And then there's other countries, like Iran, for example, and there's other places like certain war-torn zones, for example, that there are data centers, and often what they call bulletproof hosting is operated in those regions where it may be a local commander who doesn't care. He's in the middle of a war,
right?
So you're not going to be able to get it shut down, right? So the actual authority isn't derived from the powers that are recognized. The powers that actually have control aren't recognized, so they're not part of any copyright agreement, international agreements or anything of that nature.
It doesn't stop them from trying. Like, all of these governments think that they can just impose their will upon anyone anywhere in the world. Like when the UK was trying to threaten people in the United States for saying things that that they're arresting people in the UK for,
like slander,
we'll come and get you.
or not slander, but I'm trying to think what they have. They very
hurt feelings.
Yeah, it's literally hurt feelings is basically what they have criminalized, and
which is insane.
Yeah, it's anybody who is of means can basically suppress your speech in the UK.
Mm-hmm. So
anybody who is trying to do anything accountability wise is going to have a very, very difficult time in the UK, because they'll get sued and most likely win because if you can't prove everything that you're saying, yeah.
Right. And so people in the US thought that was ridiculous because we have free speech here, and they were like, we're going to troll them and use VPNs to make it look like we're
coming from the UK.
we're in the UK, and we're going to just post the most absurd, offensive nonsense. And they were like, we're going to come and arrest you.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Like, that's
right.
not how this works.
There's this thing called jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, one of the things that's interesting about the UK is they have one-way extradition with the United States. So the United States can actually get the UK government to extradite its citizens. Now, there might be some exceptions in there, but generally the UK has to surrender its citizens to the United States for prosecution.
What?
But the reverse isn't true.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Why would you ever agree to that?
Well, because the US said they'd agree to it if the UK agreed to it, and then the UK signed the agreement, but the US never signed the the agreement, and apparently it only required one side to be come into force, and the US never signed up. So
that's wild. So Torrent Freak suggested that I already read that part. I'm sorry. Notably, the broad injunction that McMahon ordered does not require internet service providers to block LibGen, although other countries have tried that too. Instead, publishers seem to be hoping that controlling domains will get rid of the pirate library, with the court ordering any newly registered domains to be turned over to publishers too.
That's not going to happen. It doesn't work that way. That's not how the internet works, guys.
And how are you going to even force people to do this?
Yeah.
I don't think that that's going to be a thing. Targeting future domains could stop LibGen from endlessly pointing users to new links to avoid takedowns, as it has historically. But there's a chance that third parties may resist complying with the order, Torrent Freak noted. So far, at least, LibGen remains online through it all, attracting 16 million monthly visits to its primary domain, which Ars confirmed is still online as of this writing, and is still exceedingly popular in the U.S., McMahon's order noted.
Yeah, you know what they're effectively trying to do is target the marketing of LibGen, because ultimately these domains that are not Onion domains are they basically result that what happens is the content on those domains ends up in search results for Google and DuckDuckGo and Brave search and a bunch of other search engines, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you can take those out, then it's harder for people to find the content that they're looking for, unless they are already aware of LibGen. And if they are already aware of LibGen, then they can just use Tor browser to access it, and they don't even need to use Google or DuckDuckGo or any of these search engines to find the content they're looking for, because they can use the search engine specific to LibGen that's built into their website. I've
never even heard of this website before this article, so this is good advertising right here.
Well, right, and there is an issue of there's what do they always say when you sue somebody? Basically, you get backlash in that especially if you're trying to hide something.
Mm-hmm.
The Streisand,
shut something down that people want.
It's there's actually a name for it. It's called the Streisand effect.
Okay.
Because there was a case I don't know, decades ago, I believe, where she sued to get something taken down or something.
Was it like an ugly picture of herself?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really honestly remember. But anyway, the point was
that was somebody else.
It then hit the news, and that it was everywhere. And it's like, okay, that doesn't work. It's just it's ineffective. You end up with more negative publicity than if you just had done nothing.
Right.
And it would have been over in one news cycle, whereas now it's all over the news.
Everyone
week after week after week. The further and longer that lawsuit takes, and the lawsuit doesn't go away overnight. So,
and then all the news stories about it, and people talking about it
and
word of mouth.
And now you've got decades and decades of this, people using the term Streisand effect because of what you did.
Oh, she must be so upset about that.
Oh, you would think, yeah.
In 2023, the Shadow Library told users that it remains indestructible by relying on thousands of volunteers worldwide who upload files and share the torrents to protect the Shadow Library from being taken down. Perhaps the most significant aspect of the order isn't the focus on domain registration, though, but a ban on providing advertising services. So yeah. Last year, LibGen also told users that it's primarily funded through Google advertising. In the video, LibGen was warning users that while admins are difficult to unmask, Google gets informed of every download, and if a user has ever registered with Google, then Google knows exactly who they are, what they've downloaded, and when they've downloaded it. If Google cuts off LibGen's advertising, the site could potentially struggle to afford continue operating. Ars attempted to reach LibGen for comment, but LibGen's inbox was full. Ars will update the story if Google provides any new insights. So, I have a question. Say you went to the public library and used their computer to make your Google account with not your actual info, and then just used a VPN when you used it at home on that Google account. Could they still know who you were?
What do we? I'm sorry.
Like-
I'm losing you as far as what we're talking about.
they were saying
exactly.
that they were saying that if
Are you talking
you've
about
ever
I'm talking about the LibGen people.
no
that-
like
that
if
are-
the government, if they wanted to know who you were and you didn't ever use your Google account, because it says that Google will know who you are if you download their files. So if you never use Google with your actual name and like from your actual IP address and stuff like that, can they still? Because I feel like people who are using this are using VPNs and stuff.
I mean, ultimately, so I don't know if LibGen requires you to create an account in order to access their site. I know there are some book similar sites that do, I think. But that said, you know, if you use a throwaway email address or something like that, and you've created it through a VPN or Tor browser or something like that, then
you'd just be anonymous.
Yeah,
right?
You'd be anonymous. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or
that's my
at least
question.
sufficiently so for you know the purposes of like the government trying to go after you for downloading
a file.
pirated something. Yeah, but I mean, keep in mind that the government likes to use fear to how do I say this, to scare people, and as does the copyright cartels.
Yes.
So there's not really that much to be fearful of if all you're doing is pirating content. You could do it openly and blatantly and advertise to everybody on the radio that you're a huge pirate, and it's not going to make any difference.
Well, and I feel like people who are using this type of service like LibGen are probably using VPNs, most likely.
I doubt it.
Really?
I doubt it.
I mean,
mean,
that's pretty common now.
the reality is, so VPNs are common, but I think they're probably used more to bypass censorship than they are for the purpose of accessing pirated content. I mean, the risk, here's something to keep in mind. So even when the copyright cartels were going after people for pirating stuff using what's called torrenting.
Yeah.
And that's basically peer-to-peer file sharing. So
I remember.
Yeah. They basically, they went after thousands of people. But if you look at the number of pirates out there, there's no way that the courts could handle the number of lawsuits that would actually make a big enough dent to where you would be at any kind of risk of getting caught up in it. Like you might get a letter from your ISP threatening you, but that's about the extent of it for almost everybody who's openly pirating, right?
Yeah, I got one back in the day. Back in the Pirate Bay days.
Yeah,
I used to use it.
It's a scare tactic. That's all it is. There's basically, I mean, I don't want to say that, like I said, I mean, it's not that nobody's ever, had to pay a fine or whatever, but it's in practical reality, the risk is so small. You're much more likely to get hit by a car,
right?
Or something else occurring bad to you than, pirating. So
I feel like there was a couple cases where they picked like just random nobodies who downloaded a couple things back in the Pirate Bay days, that downloaded a couple things and like punished them for it to try to scare people, but then nothing happened. Nobody got scared. Everybody was like, whatever.
Even of the people who were substantially penalized through court cases, I don't even remember what they went up to, but hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even millions. None of them were actually like held to those to account for those fines that they were fined from the courts.
How could you?
So nobody's ever paid them.
Because it's like some 14-year-old somewhere downloading Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. I mean, and ultimately that's what it comes down to is even after all that publicity, a lot of those numbers the numbers don't even add up to like what people would actually pay, assuming they paid, right? Mm-hmm. So like, for example, usually when they settle, the settlement will say, okay, we're going to settle for, X hundreds of thousands of dollars, but you don't actually have to pay X hundreds of thousands of dollars. You just can't tell people that you're not paying the, whatever it is that we agree to. Mm-hmm. So it looks, because really what they're after is the publicity. It's not actually making people pay. It's
scaring people.
Yeah. It's scaring the public into not pirating stuff. And I think the answer here is really, if you're not going to pirate something, you should do it for some sort of moral or support reasons. So it not because the law tells you to, or because of some scare tactic that the copyright cartels are using or the government is using.
Right.
I would certainly support, projects and artists and things that, that I think are worthy of supporting. Right. But I'm certainly not going to pay, for something just because somebody's threatening me. Right. And most of the time, that's all copyright is. It's a threat.
Yeah.
And I don't take threats very, I'm not very how do I say this? I don't take very lightly to threats. So if you're going to threaten me, I'm not going to pay you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't pirate things because I do want to support the people that are creating things that I like.
Yeah. The problem is that when you pay people, you often aren't supporting the people that are creating things. All right. You're paying a corporation, you're an entity.
Sometimes I do Patreon with certain podcasts.
That's a little bit different.
Like,
yeah. So that's a little bit different. But yeah. So you're talking about contributing to a creator as opposed to contributing or paying for a book or a piece of music or a movie or something like that.
Right. Yeah, I don't go to the movies often, and like I have subscription services for all that stuff. But like if I'm most of the media that I intake is podcasts. I listen to podcasts like all day long, all night long. I go to sleep listening to a podcast. And so if I really like something, I want to give them money in exchange for the service that they're giving me instead of just.
This is a great time for a ad to Free Talk Live. If you're interested in contributing, you can check out
amps.freetalklive.com.
There you go. And you can make a contribution if you like our content.
Yeah, you can amp us and support us. AMP stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support.
Yeah.
I can't believe I remember that.
And just to clarify, we're actually not the hosts are not actually getting that money. That money is actually going to increasing the radio stations so that we can get our message out there of peace and freedom.
We do this out of passion.
Right. Yep.
So you also have some tech, internet, IP, maybe related things that you want to talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a interesting story with Pavel. Am I saying that right?
Pavel, I think.
Pavel.
Durov.
Basically the founder of Telegram, getting arrested here recently. And I think we might have covered this. I'm pretty sure we covered at least the arrest. But what we haven't covered is the reaction that Telegram has had to the arrest. And basically, the government, the French government and law enforcement in general has basically been very much saying Telegram users do bad stuff. Therefore, we want access to everybody's data. Mm-hmm. And Telegram has, for the most part, I don't want to say flatly refused because they actually have not flatly refused as the government is trying to suggest. The government wants you to believe that that Telegram does not cooperate when it comes to terrorism or any kind of bad stuff, right?
Right. Well, that doesn't serve them. If you think that if they're giving up your data, you're not going to keep putting it on there for them to get. So,
well, in any event, that's not really been the case, but that's the story that the French government is basically telling. Mm-hmm. And basically they're not happy with the amount of cooperation that is occurring. And so they want to expand this and they're using violence to get their way. And what that means is they've arrested Pavel as he has transported through France, his plane landed in France and they arrested him basically.
Right. So didn't they tell him too that like, oh, nothing's going to happen, and then he landed and then they arrested him?
I don't know that I heard that. I don't know if it was the president of France, somebody important, one of the politicians in France, somebody high up that was important, basically signed off or something to that effect on giving him citizenship in France. Mm. Now this is kind of irrelevant. Everybody thinks that's somehow relevant, but it's not.
Does it give them greater?
It's more like in the public
over him.
No,
if he's a citizen,
it doesn't. It makes no difference as to basically the crime. It shouldn't make any difference as to whether or not he committed the crime or whether or not they can arrest him for it. So it doesn't. It's all it is it looks maybe, I don't know if I want to say bad, or it looks, it gives the public the impression that somehow, well, if he's a French citizen, he has to comply with French law. Well, that's not actually how things work. So the way the law works is if you're in a country, you have to comply with that country's laws, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is Pavel was not in France, so he did not have to comply with French law. He had to comply with the UAE law, where Telegram operates and was founded and so on. And there's this thing called jurisdiction, and he wasn't committing a crime in France, but they've decided to arrest him anyway in France. And this is really messed up and dangerous. I mean, think about it this way. If you do something in the United States, like, I don't know, I don't even know, like maybe the French government has an order to install cameras inside hotel rooms, and you're a hotel operator, right, in the United States. You don't actually have any hotels in France. You only have hotels in the United States, but you travel to France. Well, it's like you may or may not be a French citizen. It doesn't really matter. Maybe you are only a U.S. citizen, but you are now in France. Well, now the French have decided they're going to arrest you because you didn't install cameras in your hotel like the French law requires, even though it doesn't require it in the United States.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering, like, maybe there's something in French law that says if you're a French citizen and you commit a crime, that's a crime in France, but you commit it somewhere else, maybe they can arrest you, and that's why they made him a citizen.
I don't believe that's the case. I believe the only thing, it's just like any other law, which it says if you are it's something like if you are an internet operator of some sort of service or whatever, you have to obey French laws. But the catch here is that it's limited to, in theory at least, in legal theory, it's limited to in their jurisdiction, because most crimes are not considered to be, if you go to another jurisdiction and you commit what would be a crime in your where you came from, that's not a crime where you came from. It's only a crime in the jurisdiction that you, well, it's not a crime at that point. It would only be a crime in the jurisdiction that you, if it is a crime anyway, in the jurisdiction that you're in. There's a few exceptions to that. Like, for example, the ones I can think of, maybe it's not really an exception, but you could sort of think of it as an exception. If you travel with the intent, at least, of having sex with minors overseas, that's a crime, and they can arrest you when you come back.
Right.
Now, how they're supposed to prove intent, because somebody could travel overseas, have sex with a minor, not having had the intent, and then come back. But anyway, but the point is that generally speaking, there's a jurisdiction limit. So now, usually, like extradition, if they're going to be able to extradite you, it's usually requires there to be some sort of connection to a country. So the United States will frequently try and use things like hosting. Oh, well, your company hosted in the United States, or you registered a domain that was in the United States, or something like that, even though you've never been to the United States, in order to secure that extradition.
603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Tired of the ever-inflating US dollar? You can live your life on Dash instead with some handy websites. BitRefill.com has been accepting Dash for years and has a ton of big-name retailers and brands, including grocers, gas stations, phone refills, Amazon, and even prepaid MasterCards. Plus, many of their gift cards are available at a discount. But what about paying your bills? Spritz.finance can do that, and they can send dollars to your bank account in case you still need those for some reason. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. More than 110 people are known to have died, and at least 600 people are missing across multiple US states after Hurricane Helene. President Joe Biden says he plans to visit areas hit in the coming days, but does not want his trip to delay getting supplies to the affected people.
There's nothing like wondering, is my husband, wife, son, daughter, mother, father alive? And many more who remain without electricity, water, food, and communications. Homes and businesses have washed away in an instant. I want them to know we're not leaving until the job is done. I also want you to know I'm committed to traveling to the impacted areas as soon as possible, but I've been told that it would be disruptive if I did it right now. We will not do that at the risk of diverting or delaying any of the response assets needed to deal with this crisis.
The United Nations Security Council has approved the extension of a multinational security support mission to Haiti for another year. The Council had already authorised a Kenyan-led international security mission to assist the Caribbean country to help restore order against the ongoing gang violence last year. On Monday, the United States requested the mission be changed to a full-blown peacekeeping operation, but China and Russia opposed that move. Jody Jacobs reports from the United Nations in New York.
After more than 6 drafts of the resolution, it was finally put to a vote and adopted unanimously in the Security Council on Monday morning. The contentious issue was a paragraph asking for a plan to transform the security mission into a formal UN peacekeeping operation. But this received backlash from China and Russia, who say the environment in Haiti is not conducive for a fully fledged peacekeeping operation. The current security mission to Haiti, while authorized by the UN Security Council, is not a United Nations operation, and countries voluntarily provide money and personnel. Haitian leaders last week warned of the worsening insecurity in the country, despite the partial deployment of the security mission. It supports the US request for a peacekeeping operation. Jody Jacobs, New York.
The man accused of plotting to kill former US President Donald Trump at his Florida golf course has pleaded not guilty to 5 criminal counts, including attempting to assassinate a major presidential candidate. US correspondent Kate Fisher reports.
58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ruth faces 5 charges, including the assassination attempt, gun charges, and assaulting an officer. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. US Secret Service agents spotted the barrel of his high-powered rifle in the bushes outside the Trump International Golf Club on September the 15th. They fired at him before he fled the scene. He did not fire any shots, but law enforcement say his weapon was loaded with 11 rounds of ammunition.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the toll on the Biden administration that is being taken by Benjamin Netanyahu's determination to ignore the entreaties he receives from Washington over the spiralling conflict in the Middle East. Israel's elimination over the weekend of Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah flew in the face of Biden's efforts to secure a 21-day ceasefire. Jasmine El-Gamal is a Middle East analyst and a former Pentagon advisor during the Obama administration. She says Biden has only himself to blame.
He's not actually trying seriously to effect any change. I mean, he's been complaining about Benjamin Netanyahu for almost a year now. And all of these leaked stories about how frustrated he is with Netanyahu, how he has angry phone calls with Netanyahu. But in the meantime, the U.S. continues to send arms and funds, continues to support the war militarily. Their envoy, Amos Hochstein, who's been dealing on the Lebanon-Israel issue, has been completely sidelined, ineffective. The Israelis don't really tell him anything before they do what they do, and likewise with Secretary of State Blinken. So the Americans really come out of this looking extremely impotent diplomatically on one end, and then also at the same time continuing to fuel the very conflict that they say they're trying to end.
And of course, there are questions about how all this will impact the presidential election campaign of Vice President Kamala Harris. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again. More than 110 people are known to have died, and another 600 are missing following Hurricane Helene. The United Nations Security Council has extended a security support mission for Haiti, but a proposal put forward by the US for a full-grown peacekeeping mission was voted down. Ryan Ruth, the man accused of trying to assassinate former US President Donald Trump, has pleaded not guilty to the charges laid against him on Monday. And that's the latest from Feature Story News. Caroline
A report confirms that many Iraqis are still holding a petty grudge about the U.S. invasion. An advanced alien civilization discovers an uninhabitable planet, and a single woman has a Facebook profile picture with her sister. This is the Onion Week in Review. A groundbreaking study published Monday in the Journal of the American Medical Association confirmed that it is impossible to lose weight. No one has ever done it, and those who are trying should give up immediately. Researchers said that findings conclusively prove that shedding excess weight has never happened, changing your physical appearance is impossible, and that all sorts of exercises, personal training regimens, and diets will never, ever work.
Well, our test results conclusively prove that if you're going to the gym to lose weight, you will fail. You could work out every day and eat nothing and you still wouldn't lose an ounce. Skinny people will stay skinny, overweight people will be overweight. That's just how it is.
In other news, an area man is outraged his private information is being collected by someone other than advertisers. And a crowd cheers as this 93-year-old f***up finally graduates from college.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. Call it 603-283-6160. Are you tired of the oppressive rules and moderation of the big tech social media sites? Our Mastodon server at social.freetalklive can set you free. Mastodon is free, open source, decentralized, and federated. Multiple apps are available for iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, Linux. social.freetalklive.com. So we do have a caller on the line, and this is a call-in radio show. So we're going to go right to the phones. We have Creighton in Kentucky. Hi, Creighton.
Yes. Earlier, I caught part of a conversation in which I believe you referred to copyright infringement as piracy. And I know it's petty to complain about the semantics of it, but I had to call in because when you use words like that, when our side is willing to use their phrases that equate copyright infringement, which is the sharing of data, to that of murder and theft on the high seas, we've already kind of lost the argument.
I think that that's a good point.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I don't know which of us or both of us probably did use the word piracy, and it's not a good fit as far as what is actually occurring. Copying something does not deprive the other person of anything. It's a copy.
Mm-hmm.
So unless you
you're
somehow
not taking something away.
Yeah, unless you've somehow deleted it, like they still have it. So yeah.
And one of the things that has always bothered me about this whole argument, even when I was very young, copying is not theft. I mean, that's the quick way of saying it.
Of course it's not.
But the reality of it is that even under copyright regime that we have today, as harsh as it is today, it's a lot more harsher now than it used to be when I was a child. Even as harsh as it is now, that there's always been exceptions for non-commercial use, especially for education and what otherwise might be considered a library. Like if a library, an official branch library of a county were to copy their own materials that they had purchased, they could do that to create backups. They could do that to actually create extra volumes of a volume no longer in print. There's all kinds of exceptions.
I can't, though.
The cartels will definitely disagree with you on this, and there's a current court case going on between archive.org and the government on this very issue.
Yeah, I did a story about this a few weeks ago where during COVID, an actual library made copies of their materials so that they could pass it out to more than one person at once, and they got shut down.
Google did win a case, I believe, in verse regarding a library, having a library where it scanned out of copyright books. And they were sued still by publishers, I think it was.
Yeah.
So I think there's some truth to what you're saying, but there's also like another side to it as well.
It's a messy fight that's going on right now.
Yeah.
It also matters who controls the narrative, especially when you go into court.
Mm-hmm.
And that's entirely their power. And as far as the corporate copyright power is who controls the narrative. And they're very good at that. Don't get me wrong. They are very good at controlling the narrative. But the exceptions for education and for library use, fair use, are coded in law. Yep. And what I said is if the library makes a copy of materials that they already own when something is out of print or as a backup.
And that's definitely being fought in the courts currently.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I did a story about it where an actual library made copies of things they already owned to pass out during COVID, like digital copies, and because they changed it got changed into a new format because it was a digital copy, they said
transformative is an exception in the law. Yep.
Said you cannot have that.
Of course, the cartels are arguing it wasn't transformative, but
okay, I can't argue the details, but I do know that fair use is a protective law. But of course, I've also been on the inside of a courtroom and know that it doesn't matter what's written down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it only matters what can be argued. If they can't argue in your favor, you're kind of screwed anyway. So it's kind of a balance. But of course, one would presume that the law would be in the favor of the library anyway. It's a public library.
Yep.
They're the one exception to socialism that is coded in the U.S. Constitution. Libraries, the Library of Congress is coded in there.
If you really want to go here, it's also really messed up that there is. So normally, like we have this whole government bureaucracy to go after monopolies, right? They want to go after Microsoft and Google and Facebook and, all of these companies for being monopolies in respective industries. And yet then we have this law that carves out an exception that literally establishes a monopoly. Yeah. It's called copyright. Yep.
Copyright are monopolies. Yes.
Yep.
They are by definition.
Yep. And that's it.
They would love to make that permanent. Even Congress would love to make that permanent. But it has already been declared in many ways that copyright cannot be permanent. It's not a permanent license to threaten other people and control information. That at some point in the future, that culture must enter into the public domain. Has to. Although they keep pushing it back. So functionally, we're still in things older than 1914, roughly, are public domain in the United States, even though these same copyrights that are protecting the United States to this massive degree are off copyright in other countries.
Yeah. Do you know why the copyright law keeps getting extended?
Primarily because Disney does not want to lose control of Mickey Mouse.
And do you know what they lost control over, at least the original versions here recently?
Mortimer Mouse, the original Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So it's crazy too, because Disney, a lot of their stories are not even their original stories. They took these stories from like German fairy tales and stuff and turned them into a story.
They were public domain stories from long ago,
right?
That they were able to sweep into their copyrighted regime in the United States. And like I said, not everything that is copyrighted in the United States is copyrighted in other countries.
Yeah, that's not hypocrisy.
And you know what's absolutely crazy too is the extent to which copyright holders like Disney go to actually enforce their copyrights. They've gone after like copy machine I don't know what you would call them, but stores that have copy machines that allow you to put a nickel in or a dime in to make a copy of a photocopy of something. They've actually gone after them. And if you ever take something that is like got a Disney character into one of these places like a Staples, or I don't know who else does it, Office Max or wherever, or a 5 and dime, and you ask them to make a copy, they won't do it if it's got anything that looks like it might be Disney's content, because there's companies have been sued over this, and it just seems so absurd for somebody to make a single copy of something for their own personal use that you're not going to be allowed to make a copy. Like, this is just insanity.
Yeah, and like creating your own art, like in original art using like a mouse that looks like Mickey Mouse. Shut it down. Like, you can't even do that. It's not even something they created. It's not a copy of anything they created. You created a whole new thing. Can't do it.
Yeah, I don't know if they're arguing trademark. I think they might be arguing trademark on that one. But yeah, either way, it's absolutely insane. It's not like the thing is, and what people have to understand is like trademark law is in theory to protect the consumer against fraud, so that you can't claim to be, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a company. It doesn't really matter, but you can't claim to be Ford maybe, and then come out with a car with the Ford trademark on it,
right?
And claim it's a Ford, right?
But it's all like janky and falling apart.
Yeah, right. It's to protect the consumer, but that's not how trademark law is often used. It's often abused to go after people who are merely trying to make a copy of some, book for their kid or whatever, to color in or whatever, something
or like
something
derivative art, which should be totally fine. That should be totally fine. You're creating a new thing.
Well, now they try to claim copyrights on themes or something along those lines. So if you have too many elements, like I think in the science fiction world, for example, if you have too many elements that match up with a particular, like, I don't know, I guess a particular work, that's
absurd.
They can claim that like you're violating their copyright.
That's absurd. There's so many different works of art that people have made. How are you supposed to know every single one and the entire contents of every book or movie ever made in that genre?
My question becomes, well, how many elements constitutes infringement at that point, right? Like is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 1,000? Like, how many elements are going to be necessary before it becomes infringement?
And some things have like
in music, it's already been established in court that the minimum is 3 notes. All you have to do is have 3 notes in common.
That's insane.
That is insane. There's only so many notes.
Right. Like, yeah,
that's crazy because like with there's only so many notes. Like in genres and stuff, there are certain elements that have to be there in order to fit the genre.
And you know what else is kind of messed up too is math can't be copyrighted, but do you know what can be? Music. And do you know what music turns into?
It's math. Everything's math.
It's like, wait, what?
So that's how like recipe blogs and stuff.
Yeah.
So you can't copyright a recipe, but you can copyright all of that other stuff, and that's how they get around like trademarking their content. Is they write like those big long stories that nobody wants to read and then like stick the recipe in there. So that's how they do that, because you can't actually copyright a recipe.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anything else, Creighton?
I just wanted to call and vent.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it. And I will try to stop using the word piracy.
Yeah, we should definitely try to avoid that word.
Thanks for your call. So you were telling us about Pavel Durov being motivated to give up more user data from Telegram.
Yeah, if motivated means threats of violence, absolutely.
Yep.
By the French government. So they have arrested him because bad stuff happens on a platform that he's the founder of. And because he can, well, we don't really know enough of the details, so let's not get into the details in that sense. But what we do know is that they have threatened him, and Telegram has unfortunately responded. And this is one of the reasons why I've always said that Telegram is the least, or at one point was the least bad option as far as a modern messaging application, because basically there was source code available, whereas like things like, I'm trying to think, like WhatsApp, there was no source code, or Signal. Signal, there's not we don't have 100% of the source code, but we have a lot of the source code. But yeah, certainly it's better than Signal in that respect, I think, too. And you can't even begin to talk about like how security without talking about without a full set of source code, basically. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, but there are other options out there today, like Matrix, that do provide some decentralization. And
I love Matrix.
There is a complete set of source code for it. So there are options out there you can definitely check out. Definitely check out Matrix. It's one of them. So, and unlike Telegram, there is no central server, and it is end-to-end encrypted. Telegram has secret chats that are end-to-end encrypted, which basically means that Telegram, the company, can't see what you're sending. Mm-hmm. But with their normal chats, which is what 99% of Telegram is just normal chats, they can potentially look at what you're sending back and forth. That doesn't mean there's no encryption, but it's only encryption between you and their server, and then they can access it.
Right.
But not necessarily a random person on the internet who can see your traffic like your ISP. Mm-hmm. All right. So what's in the news? So what exactly is happening here? So the company behind Telegram will provide users' IP addresses and phone numbers to relevant authorities in response to valid legal requests, according to the chief executive officer Pavel. What's really messed up here is that Pavel has control over a company that he is currently under investigation and has been arrested for. Like, the first thing you should do is step down from whatever position you have in any kind of entity once you've been arrested.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is like not the proper way to run a company or to any kind of organization. And in fact, I believe in a lot of cases, I think, like, especially when it comes to financial cases, you actually have to step down, like, legally. I know Ian stepped down, for example, from the Shire Free Church as an example when he was arrested. Just as an example.
It's just the smartest thing to do in that situation.
Yep.
Immediately.
Yep. Yeah. When you're accused of some sort of crime involving something, you step down. Mm-hmm. And that wouldn't have eliminated the pressure here, because ultimately one of the reasons it wouldn't eliminate the pressure against Telegram here is because the brother, who was also a co-founder and is not in France's jurisdiction and has not been arrested, is obviously going to be pressured through. I mean, these are like mafia tactics.
Yeah.
They're going to threaten your family in order to coerce you into doing something, right?
We've got your loved ones.
Into paying up, or, right, exactly. This is literally a mafia tactics that they're using. So unfortunately, even if he did step down, it wouldn't stop the company probably from complying, unfortunately. I think probably the best way to have handled this is for somebody to have been put in place as the executive, and then the brother and Pavel both stepped down. Mm-hmm. That way they could not be pressured through this government meddling, because obviously once you've stepped down, then, you can't do what the government tells you. You can't order the government, or you can't order your company to do what the government tells you, because
you have no control.
You don't have control anymore. Right. That's probably what he should have done. He did. I know Pavel did that with his previous company, I think, or something like that, where he sold the company off. So he had I'm trying to think what his other platform was, but it was like a competitor to Facebook, and it's very popular in Russia and like Eastern Europe. But in any event, doesn't really matter. But he sold that company because he was pressured by the Russian government. And I think he basically founded Telegram with the idea that he wouldn't do that again, and he would set things up differently. But I think I think what occurred then is very telling as to what would likely occur and has occurred now.
Right.
As of this story, they've not been able to resist the government, And it wasn't the Russian government this time. It was the French government.
They're all the same guys. In the end, different masks.
And I think this is very much telling that we don't live in. We think of like Western governments as being somehow, better or, less susceptible to corruption and authoritarianism. But it's just not the case. The reality is we have that in the United States, just as they have that in France. Now, it might be worse in France and it might be better in France than it is in Russia, but it is clearly not that much better because look at what's happened.
Currently, we have better free speech here. Like, that's one of the things that I'm like, America is still the best one.
Yeah.
Because we got the free speech protections, but they're trying to do away with that. So we'll see.
There's definitely more exceptions in other countries, in most other countries. But there often is, and this is the funny thing, I often hear from people in Europe and they'll be like, well, we don't have a Bill of Rights, but we have, our freedom of speech established in law or something to that effect, which is often what they'll claim.
Except for like, they just go to jail for saying.
And then if you actually like look at like people and censorship and all this other stuff, it's like, wait a minute, didn't you say you have freedom of speech? But but your actual, like, if you actually look at what's happening in the real world, it doesn't look like it to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
Like they can't, if you can't freely say anything you want without being punished for it, then you don't have free speech.
Right.
That's
yeah.
it.
It's like if you can't criticize, somebody because you're going to get sued into the ground and the law is going to back up the person who's suing you, you can't afford to speak.
Yeah.
And that's very much sort of the situation, like in the United Kingdom. That's very much a situation, but it's not exclusive to the United Kingdom.
Like we do have some laws here like that, like libel and slander laws.
We do, but they're very.
You have to like prove that it was a lie.
Yeah, it's very much on the other end of it. It's the difference between they have to prove it's a lie,
right?
Not you have to prove it isn't a lie, or it. Let's see. Yeah, you're not left to have to prove that it's true. They have to prove that it's not true.
Right.
So it's very much more difficult to win a lawsuit. I guess it would be a civil suit in that type of a situation.
Right.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it for the. We don't really want to cover the whole Telegram story in regards to this.
I do have one that I want to talk about because of Creighton's call, where he was talking about, they have to go by the laws that are established as far as libraries. It's already written into the law. And we were like, yeah, but they're trying to challenge that.
Yeah.
So this is from the Rolling Stone. Conservatives test whether the Supreme Court will do literally anything they want. That's the headline.
Wait, what?
Conservatives test whether the Supreme Court will do literally anything they want. Which, yeah, they will. If you're in the business of seeking out public information, it can be frustrating when an agency denies your public records request or refuses to waive any fees it might require before handing over documents. It's normal to call up the agency and say, hey, this is important. If you're a journalist, you might write a story about how the government is blocking access to information the public urgently needs. You might even sue to try to get the records released. If you work at a right-wing think tank, say an organization financed by Leonard Leo, the dark money master who assembled the Supreme Court's conservative supermajority, you might evidently try going nuclear, using some denied records requests as a vehicle to urge the High Court to declare that a federal agency's structure is unconstitutional because its director cannot be fired by the president. That's what's happening in Consumers Research versus Consumer Product Safety Commission, a case that conservatives wish to put before the Supreme Court this term. The petitioners in the case are Consumers Research, a conservative think tank bankrolled by Leo, and by 2LP, an educational consulting company in Texas with little public footprint. 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. More than 110 people are known to have died, and at least 600 people are missing across multiple U.S. states after Hurricane Helene. President Joe Biden says he plans to visit areas hit in the coming days, but does not want his trip to delay getting supplies to the affected people.
There's nothing like wondering, is my husband, wife, son, daughter, mother, father alive? And many more who remain without electricity, water, food, and communications. Homes and businesses have washed away in an instant. I want them to know we're not leaving until the job is done. I also want you to know I'm committed to traveling to the impacted areas as soon as possible, but I've been told that it would be disruptive if I did it right now. We will not do that at the risk of diverting or delaying any of the response assets needed to deal with this crisis.
The United Nations Security Council has approved the extension of a multinational security support mission to Haiti for another year. The Council had already authorised a Kenyan-led international security mission to assist the Caribbean country to help restore order against the ongoing gang violence last year. On Monday, the United States requested the mission be changed to a full-blown peacekeeping operation, but China and Russia opposed that move. Jody Jacobs reports from the United Nations in New York.
After more than 6 drafts of the resolution, it was finally put to a vote and adopted unanimously in the Security Council on Monday morning. The contentious issue was a paragraph asking for a plan to transform the security mission into a formal UN peacekeeping operation. But this received backlash from China and Russia, who say the environment in Haiti is not conducive for a fully fledged peacekeeping operation. The current security mission to Haiti, while authorized by the UN Security Council, is not a United Nations operation, and countries voluntarily provide money and personnel. Haitian leaders last week warned of the worsening insecurity in the country, despite the partial deployment of the security mission. It supports the US request for a peacekeeping operation. Jody Jacobs, New York.
The man accused of plotting to kill former US President Donald Trump at his Florida golf course has pleaded not guilty to 5 criminal counts, including attempting to assassinate a major presidential candidate. US correspondent Kate Fisher reports.
58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ruth faces 5 charges, including the assassination attempt, gun charges, and assaulting an officer. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. US Secret Service agents spotted the barrel of his high-powered rifle in the bushes outside the Trump International Golf Club on September the 15th. They fired at him before he fled the scene. He did not fire any shots, but law enforcement say his weapon was loaded with 11 rounds of ammunition. Kate Fisher.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live, talk radio you control. Call in at 603-283-6160. It's officially unofficial. We've been podcasting since podcasts began, but we've launched a new podcast anyway. Our new podcast is a 30 to 45-minute show that releases once a week, and you can find it at freetalkcast.com. It's brought to you by the same people who bring you Free Talk Live, and we'd love for you to check it out. The existing radio archive isn't going anywhere. This is just a new show designed from the start to be a podcast, so check it out at freetalkcast.com. In the studio is Lori.
And Mr. Penguin.
So I was talking about this story from the Rolling Stone about conservatives trying to basically make the Supreme Court admit it can do whatever it wants and is not beholden to the actual laws. So it's not clear why the husband and wife duo behind By2, who appear to have run a side business breeding Havanese puppies, would necessarily be interested in the independence of the federal agencies. The original complaint says they are parents of young children who use and play with products regulated by the commission, adding, as parents, they have an interest in ensuring that the products used by their children do not pose unreasonable risks of injury. Their participation in the case likely helped ensure the lawsuit went before a conservative federal judge in Texas before heading to the conservative Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Consumer Research and By2 did not respond to Rolling Stone's request for comment. The case is part of a broader effort by conservatives to end the independence of regulatory agencies utilizing their supermajority on the Supreme Court. Leo, who helped Donald Trump select and install 3 of the High Court's 6 conservative justices, has urged wealthy conservative donors to back efforts to flood the zone with cases that challenge misuse of the Constitution by the administrative state. Ultimately, the case feels like a test for Leo's conservative allies on the Supreme Court. Will they accept any vehicle, no matter the details, to advance their anti-regulatory crusade? Justices are scheduled to discuss the matter on Monday. The effort from Consumers Research and By2 targets the independence of the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, which was created by Congress half a century ago to protect Americans from being injured or harmed by unsafe consumer products. Lawyers representing Consumer Research and By2 write that scholars of the administrative state have branded the CPSC as the most powerful federal regulatory agency ever created. The CPSC is an independent agency. Its members are nominated by the president and serve for 7-year terms. The president does not have the power to remove them except for cause. Conservatives wish to change that. The commission's work is vital. This month, the CPSC announced recalls on children's rings that contained prohibited levels of lead and cadmium, kids' garden tools coated with lead paint, an infant high chair that can both trap a baby and let them fall out. That's pretty impressive. They could do both. A desk lamp that can overheat and catch fire, a spa pump that can overheat and ignite, and a bed prone to collapsing while people sleep on it. You get the picture. It seems like this consumer protection isn't actually protecting anyone. Like they maybe just approve things for people whose pockets they're in.
Wait a minute. Is that what they're saying they're doing?
Yeah.
They're approving products that are unsafe?
Yes. Yeah, the consumer protections is approving things that are, filled with lead and cadmium and breaking and burning your house down and killing your kids.
Yikes.
And the people that run it can't be removed. They're appointed for 7 years and you can't remove them. So if they're not doing their job, you're just stuck with them for 7 years.
You know what's kind of funny is the Silk Road actually had a better system that they were working on than this, where they weren't banning products or like sellers, but they were basically having independent tests done on the products that the sellers were shipping out.
Mm-hmm. And being able to have reviews on everything is nice too, like actual reviews.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
And not just like, bots. Consumers Research and By2 do not make products that are regulated by the CPSC. Rather, they assert the right to challenge the CPSC's independence based on how it handled public record requests they filed under the Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA. Effectively, they argue they are victims of FOIA procedures administered by an agency that is unconstitutionally insulated from the president. When the lawsuit began, Consumers Research had filed 25 FOIA requests with the CPSC, and By2 had filed 50 requests with the CPSC. Some of the requests sought records of all rules and safety standards relating to products like infant high chairs, pacifiers, dolls, rattles, baby carriers, car seats, and baby floats, going back 3 decades. The CPSC denied some of the FOIA requests and requested for fee waivers. The idea that these FOIA rejections offer sufficient basis for this effort to end the CPSC's independence is on its face laughable. President Joe Biden's solicitor, Elizabeth Prelogar, explained in a recent filing why their argument is both ridiculous and troubling. In short, petitioners' mere submission of FOIA requests to the commission does not give them Article 3 standing to challenge the commissioner's removal protection. She wrote, otherwise, any individual or entity could manufacture standing to litigate any separation of powers issue against any agency simply by asserting an intent to make FOIA requests. Well, I mean, if you give a FOIA request, aren't they supposed to just give it to you? Isn't that the whole point of that whole thing? If they're denying giving you the information for the safety of these children's products, it's not like they're protecting state secrets. Shouldn't that say that there's something going on there?
Yeah, I mean, there are exceptions to FOIA requests, but it's
like state secrets, maybe.
Yeah, like I don't know how this would apply in this type of a case.
It's because they don't want to be found out that they're not actually doing what they claim to be doing, keeping people safe. She further noted that Consumers Research and Baitu are not subject to the Commission's regulatory enforcement or adjudicatory authority, adding that even if petitioners' intention was to file FOIA requests were somehow sufficient to satisfy Article 3, that is at best a threadbare and attenuated personal stake in the important constitutional question petitioners asked the court to decide. While the basis of the lawsuit is absurd, the lawyers on the case are no joke. The legal team is made up of high-powered lawyers from Jones Day, including former Trump White House counsel Don McGahn. McGahn serves on the board of the influential conservative legal network, the Federalist Society, alongside Leo, a longtime executive at the society who is now co-chair. Consumers Research and Baitu have received backing from 16 Republican attorneys general. Leo's dark money network has long been the top financier of the Republican Attorneys General Association, which helps elect GOP law enforcement chiefs. Leo's network has funded several nonprofits supporting the petitioners, including Advancing American Freedom, which is led by former Vice President Mike Pence, Americans for Limited Government, and the New Civil Liberties Alliance. Speaking in March about the Supreme Court he helped assemble, Leo said, "We have a great Overton window in the next couple of decades to really try to create a free society, and I think we should take full advantage of it." So I'm not a big fan of regulatory bodies. Also, I agree with this, trying to challenge the regulatory bodies that are just there to not really do what they say they're doing. They say that they're making things safer for you, or they're researching and testing these things. But like, if that were true, then we wouldn't have constant recalls of things that are killing people or making them extremely sick.
Yeah, I you know, the problem too is that like it might be one thing, like if there's only like the product doesn't do what it's advertised to do, but often products do what they're advertised to do, and they've gone after them just because they're potentially dangerous.
Well, I mean, you can't have baby toys with lead in them.
Yeah, I mean, so those are not examples. Those are not examples of that. I would be giving an example of, like, for example, I'm trying to think what these are called. I've literally got them in my hand right now, but they're like magnetic,
impossible magnets or something. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, but basically, magnets can get, you know, when babies swallow them, they can get stuck, or little kids, they can get stuck and do real damage and maybe even kill. And so there is definitely a risk factor, and the problem is that these government organizations will go after the safety one. I'm not sure exactly. I forget exactly what the name of it is, but there may be more than one here, so I'm not entirely sure if it's the same one that we're talking about here in the story. But in any event, the point is that they will go after these companies that are selling a product for adults that can be dangerous in the hands of kids, and they've appropriately put product warnings on the product saying not for kids, you know, under 3, or not for whatever, right? Not for people under 13,
right?
And not to be swallowed, right?
Right.
But ultimately, at the end of the day, there will be some percentage of that product that ends up in kids' hands for whatever reason.
Bad parenting.
And and kids will end up potentially suffering the consequences. The question becomes, do you stifle, you know, everybody else in order to minimize the risk for some small subset of the population?
Well, that's what they're trying to dismantle, is the Consumer Protection Agency, that claims all of these things like, oh, these are dangerous for kids, so we're going to have to
well, and the problem is
the Kinder eggs.
They are dangerous for kids.
They are.
But does that mean you should ban them from the market entirely?
No, but that's what Consumer Reports does. Or they're the ones that are saying, we shouldn't have these in stores, or like the Kinder eggs or choking hazards, we shouldn't have these in stores. So while they're doing that, they're also not actually testing and regulating things and putting actually dangerous things on the market, like beds that collapse when you sleep on them or lead-covered baby toys.
So things that don't actually do things that you wouldn't want them to do, or things that are not as advertised, basically.
Yes, things that are dangerous in their
that's what you would want them to go after, but that's not what they're actually going after.
That's not what they're actually going after, because they don't actually do their job properly. They're just, a job creator for their friends, basically. The Consumer Protection Agency, they can't be fired, they can't be taken out. They're appointed to a 7-year job there, and they're not even doing it. They're not even doing it right. And then when you ask for the FOIA request on give me all of the safety standards of this, they just deny you, and there's no recourse.
And this is the major problem with government. There's no accountability.
Right.
Is what you're saying, right?
Yes.
That's what the story was basically trying to point out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It does seem kind of crazy that you can become a government employee and have no accountability.
Mm-hmm. They're apparently a independent agency. So
of course,
they're also an independent agency that is assigned by the president. The whole thing is wrong. They shouldn't exist. They're not doing their job correctly. It's an abuse of power.
And it's a job that could be done by private industry.
Better. It could be done much better by private industry, because they have an actual incentive to do their job properly, or they won't have a job anymore.
Yeah. This kind of reminds me of the products on Amazon that are dangerous, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, if people don't want those dangers in their lives, they could go somewhere else that's not Amazon, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that people continue to use Amazon suggests that they want a lower price rather than something that's safe.
Yeah. Well, the problem with the Consumer Protection Agency is they say, oh, we are the authority on telling you what is safe to use. And we're telling you that these things that are clearly not safe because they're going to burn your house down or give your kid lead poisoning are safe. We're telling you this is safe. You can use it.
Yep.
So that's the biggest issue with them, is they're creating false sense of security because they have this grand presence.
The other thing that drives me nuts about these organizations, these federal organizations, or I shouldn't say organizations, federal agencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And state agencies for that matter, is that it pushes out the little guy.
Yes.
It makes it impossible for anybody who's not a mega corporation to actually exist, because the number of hoops that you have to jump through keeps on increasing. And at some point you cannot be compliant with the law.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're at risk of, criminal prosecution.
Right.
And unlike the big guys, they actually will bring a case against you as a little guy, and you actually will be locked up or, forced into a plea deal that has you serve some amount of time in a cage. And that just isn't right. It's like a mistake that you made that doesn't even affect a whole lot of people by comparison to the big guys. Yeah, you're the one who's getting prosecuted for it.
And imagine how much better the job could be done by independent research agencies that focus on a particular area, instead of being we are for all of the consumer products, all the millions and millions of consumer products that everybody goes through every day. If it was just some independent company that said, I'm going to test baby toys, and make sure that they don't have lead and stuff, and we'll put out reports and we get paid for this and all of that, it would be done so much better, because private sector always does a better job than public sector.
There's nothing that says a company can't come into existence if you stop, if you stopped with the regulation that went and they reviewed the products that they entered into their catalog. Amazon doesn't do that.
Right.
But a company could do that.
They could.
And I would be surprised if there probably isn't already a company out there that does exactly that, where they actually review the products that they get, to see if they're safe and, test them for lead and things of this nature before they sell them. And they're probably catering to parents who want safer products.
Yeah.
And I bet you if you do a Google search right now or a DuckDuckGo search or a privacy, some sort of search, you can probably find that just by typing that in the search engine.
I'm sure you could. It's the problem with the big, giant, government-appointed consumer protection agency is they are the one that the government is claiming is here to protect you, and who people are listening to and saying, yes, we're going to put our trust in this consumer protection agency that is run by the government that's not doing their job. So they need to be just done away with. They're not even doing the job. They're creating it's manufactured danger because they're telling people that these things are safe and you're supposed to trust us. And, the majority of the world trusts their government for some reason, because I don't know why, but they do. And so they're buying these things.
The government, governments have killed more people than any other entity in human history on purpose. And yet these are exactly who you're trusting. When you advocate for, new government agencies to protect us.
That's right.
They don't do a good job of it. And yet so many people are deceived into believing that, they're there to protect us.
I don't know why anyone gets this idea in their head that they're going to do their jobs well or that they're going to protect you when it's never been the case.
And then they advocate against accountability. It's like, okay, so we have these organizations. All we're asking for you to do is support changes to hold these people accountable, and yet all these people will come out of the woodwork saying, no, you can't do that. Why don't you support X, Y, or Z? And it's like, because they've proven themselves to be thieves and murderers and untrustworthy and yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we do have a call. We're going to go to the phones. Hi, caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, I pretty sure I disagree with you on your policy that we got to get rid of regulations and that all government is bad because they've got these regulations. When you go down to the store or the gas station and you get gallons of gas, there's a governmental agency that makes sure that meter is actually giving you a gallon. Mm-hmm. Every day that goes by, and for the last God knows how many years, that weights and measures, whether it's a county run or whether it's city run, whether it's state run, weights and measures comes by and checks those gas stations every once in a while. And they also check to make sure that there's ventilation systems that are making sure that the tanks under the ground don't blow up. And when East Palestine, Ohio, had that big train derailment a year and 3/4 ago, all the politicians swore that they were going to make sure that the tank cars that are rolling through America are double-lined and can't explode if they derail. Mm-hmm. And there are these, I don't know whether to call them saboteurs or fools, but they're on the House committee to make sure rail safety happens. And they have just decided not to work on that issue until after the election.
Does that not prove what I was arguing, that these regulatory companies don't actually protect anyone and do what they say they're going to do?
There's an argument to respond to your argument here, and it's one of liability. So the real issue here isn't that we don't have an agency to do these things. The real issue is that the liability, these companies haven't been held liable for the damages that they caused.
Right.
So
they have no incentive. They have no incentive. They get away with doing whatever they want. So why won't they just do whatever they want?
Yeah.
Well, if you in the economics that I was trained in, we were taught to believe that the money that you make is supposed to be your reputation. If you're a good talk show host, if you're a good window washer, the amount of money that you gather together represents your reputation. But if there's some scammer that comes into town, sells some faulty product and splits before everybody figures it out, that's not good for town. They don't need to see their money go flying out of if people pay in gold or whether they pay in cryptocurrencies for something that's broken or doesn't work to begin with. I'd like to know that there was at least something that my taxes are.
Yeah, there is something. It's called the free market. If you'll learn this is the problem. This is the problem. Here, let me explain something to you. So when people are babied and they're given the impression that there's somebody there to protect them, right? And the truth is there isn't. But there's somebody claiming that they're there to protect them. You end up with a situation that people are not careful and they don't use their heads to evaluate who they're buying from. And as a result, you end up with a lot of people doing stupid stuff like buying from random people, that are just passing through town. Now, if you were smart about it, you'd have learned your lesson long ago in youth, before you had a ton of money, before there was an opportunity to scam you, and you would be more wary with unfamiliar individuals passing through town.
How about those Trump watches?
The what?
The Trump watches? Have you seen where the headquarters of those Trump watches is?
No, I don't even know anything about Trump's watches.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
Empty parking lot. Do you want some regulations on a guy that's purporting to sell $100,000 watches, but its headquarters is an empty spot in a parking lot?
So here's the problem. You were talking about East Palestine, Ohio, right? If there's a governmental regulation company, authority, agency, whatever you want to call it, that is supposed to make sure that these things are safe, these things are lined, right? And then they didn't do it. How does that show you that you need these regulatory bodies that are not doing their job? Like, that doesn't track to me.
Well,
they're not doing their job.
There's an answer to what you're asking.
Yes.
The guy is a MAGA guy from northern Missouri named Graves, Sam Graves.
Okay.
He's a congressman, and he's the chairman of the committee. And when everybody was begging for double-lined tank cars, this guy refuses to make it happen. And the railroad company spent about $1.25 billion the year before the derailment. Now they're spending well over $2 billion a year on lobbying. Not on fixing the cars. They're lobbying to make sure that this never happens.
I mean, this is ultimately, at the end of the day, that you're talking about an economic problem. If the economic liability is high enough, then they would do this on their own, and you wouldn't need another body to investigate and make sure that it's probably not going to do its job anyway. Or this is such a stupid way of doing things.
If the regulatory
market forces say that you don't give a business license to a cheat. Now, if somebody is not going to make double-lined tank cars, and they're going to have poison gas rolling across America. Now, in East Palestine...
We have poison gas rolling across America every day. I mean, this idea that we don't is just a delusional.
Well, he's saying that the company didn't make double-lined...
Yeah, well, let me put you on hold for a second.
Yep.
If the cost, right, if it makes sense to have double-lined gas tanks in order to minimize the damages from a catastrophe, as you're speaking of, if that makes sense, okay, then the liability is going to be higher, right? It's going to cost them more. But if it doesn't, if it's below a certain point, it may not make economic sense to do this.
If the purported safety regulatory agency did its job, then it would not have happened.
Well,
obviously they don't do their job.
There should be liability on the company, and there should be insurance that company has to cover those costs. But if the costs are so high that the insurance won't cover them, they would double line their tanks so that they stay in business.
Well, the safety committee obviously didn't do their part in safety.
Right.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the ForkFest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the ForkFest forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. forkfest.party.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. More than 110 people are known to have died, and at least 600 people are missing across multiple US states after Hurricane Helene. President Joe Biden says he plans to visit areas hit in the coming days, but does not want his trip to delay getting supplies to the affected people.
There's nothing like wondering, is my husband, wife, son, daughter, mother, father alive? And many more who remain without electricity, water, food, and communications. Homes and businesses have washed away in an instant. I want them to know we're not leaving until the job is done. I also want you to know I'm committed to traveling to the impacted areas as soon as possible, but I've been told that it would be disruptive if I did it right now. We will not do that at the risk of diverting or delaying any of the response assets needed to deal with this crisis.
The United Nations Security Council has approved the extension of a multinational security support mission to Haiti for another year. The Council had already authorised a Kenyan-led international security mission to assist the Caribbean country to help restore order against the ongoing gang violence last year. On Monday, the United States requested the mission be changed to a full-blown peacekeeping operation, but China and Russia opposed that move. Jody Jacobs reports from the United Nations in New York.
After more than 6 drafts of the resolution, it was finally put to a vote and adopted unanimously in the Security Council on Monday morning. The contentious issue was a paragraph asking for a plan to transform the security mission into a formal UN peacekeeping operation. But this received backlash from China and Russia, who say the environment in Haiti is not conducive for a fully fledged peacekeeping operation. The current security mission to Haiti, while authorized by the UN Security Council, is not a United Nations operation, and countries voluntarily provide money and personnel. Haitian leaders last week warned of the worsening insecurity in the country, despite the partial deployment of the security mission. It supports the US request for a peacekeeping operation. Jody Jacobs, New York.
The man accused of plotting to kill former US President Donald Trump at his Florida golf course has pleaded not guilty to 5 criminal counts, including attempting to assassinate a major presidential candidate. US correspondent Kate Fisher reports.
58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ruth faces 5 charges, including the assassination attempt, gun charges, and assaulting an officer. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. US Secret Service agents spotted the barrel of his high-powered rifle in the bushes outside the Trump International Golf Club on September the 15th. They fired at him before he fled the scene. He did not fire any shots, but law enforcement say his weapon was loaded with 11 rounds of ammunition.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, the toll on the Biden administration that is being taken by Benjamin Netanyahu's determination to ignore the entreaties he receives from Washington over the spiralling conflict in the Middle East. Israel's elimination over the weekend of Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah flew in the face of Biden's efforts to secure a 21-day ceasefire. Jasmine El-Gamal is a Middle East analyst and a former Pentagon advisor during the Obama administration. She says Biden Biden has only himself to blame.
He's not actually trying seriously to effect any change. I mean, he's been complaining about Benjamin Netanyahu for almost a year now. And all of these leaked stories about how frustrated he is with Netanyahu, how he has angry phone calls with Netanyahu. But in the meantime, the U.S. continues to send arms and funds, continues to support the war militarily. Their envoy, Amos Hochstein, who's been dealing on the Lebanon-Israel issue, has been completely sidelined, ineffective. The Israelis don't really tell him anything before they do what they do. And likewise with Secretary of State Blinken. So the Americans really come out of this looking extremely impotent diplomatically on one end, and then also at the same time continuing to fuel the very conflict that they say they're trying to end.
And of course, there are questions about how all this will impact the presidential election campaign of Vice President Kamala Harris. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again. More than 110 people are known to have died, and another 600 are missing following Hurricane Helene. The United Nations Security Council has extended a security support mission for Haiti, but a proposal put forward by the US for a full-grown peacekeeping mission was voted down. Ryan Ruth, the man accused of trying to assassinate former US President Donald Trump, has pleaded not guilty to the charges laid against him on Monday. And that's the latest from Feature Story News. Caroline Malone.
Well, our own Rebecca Mira takes us on a tour of the Olympic Village.
We have a full-size bed, lounge area, shower, plenty of space, which is great because I'm constantly having sex in there.
The Village is a temporary home to the world's most physically impressive athletic men and women. It was important to the Olympic Committee to give them a comfortable, state-of-the-art area to each other's brains out while they're not competing.
We have a pool where they can have a sex, a theater where they can have a sex. All these athletes are hot, horny, ready to go. They deserve the best.
I was in Vancouver where I got eaten out by this French speed skater. I have to say, these facilities are even better, and I'm going to try to a Japanese guy.
You've spared no expense.
These athletes deserve the best. They sacrifice so much for their countries. They deserve to be able to until their and can't take it anymore.
And these facilities won't go to waste. Once the Olympics are over, they'll be converted to a resort where Russian businessmen can come to their prostitutes.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio you can call it 603-283-6160. I'd like to thank Timothy for being an amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. That means that Timothy went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMP stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks to Timothy and everyone who supports us. Again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of becoming an amplifier. We do appreciate everyone who supports us. It keeps the show running. So we're going to go back to our caller that we had before the break, talking about regulatory bodies and how the fact that Palestine, Ohio, having trains explode after they already said that they were going to double line these things shows you that regulatory bodies don't actually do their jobs. That's not what he's arguing with. Hi, caller. Oh.
Well, of course they aren't doing their jobs because they're Trump's MAGA people that are in the House of Representatives. They are stalling these repairs. And I'm trying to think of who's that famous old rich polluter, Koch. There used to be the Koch brothers, but Koch Industries pollutes the crap out of the world, and they also spend billions on lobbying to make sure they never have to clean it up. And if you're going to say that the regulatory agencies are at fault for not being able to make Koch clean up their stuff, well, I'm going to say then boycott Koch.
Why didn't the regulatory agency make sure that they had double-lined trains?
Well, the issue is that the Congress is supposed to mandate those double line trains, and Congressman Sam Graves of Missouri is the chairman of that committee, and he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it. Well, it poisoned rich people. It poisoned poor people. That gas flew 40 miles. It went down the river and not only poisoned the Ohio River, but all of the tributaries that it did go down. When they were spraying water on those flaming tanks, all that water rushed in the creek and then rushed in the river, poisoned over 600,000 fish. And imagine you own some riverfront property, and you're going to have that as your retirement home. And then all of a sudden, some jackass of a cheap railroad company who refuses to put in safe tank cars says that it's more important to spend to give a tax break to these polluters, to give them a tax break to lobby Congress to make sure they never clean it up. That's how your taxes are going.
I don't think we're in too much disagreement on the fact that the regulations aren't working and the regulators aren't doing their jobs. I think the issue that we have with you is mostly in how you go about fixing that problem. And the argument we're making is that it should be an issue of liability. And obviously the liabilities were huge in this case, but the companies were able to get out of or skirt those liabilities, basically.
Yeah, because these agencies don't actually work. They're not.
Right.
It's not working. A system is not working. It's all breaking down. So the system needs to be fixed in a different system.
Well, their liabilities have been limited, which is part of the problem, right? I mean, if their liabilities weren't limited, then it would be more cost effective to double line the tanks.
So the EPA was supposed to go in and make sure everything was cleaned afterwards. Another regulatory agency. They're supposed to go in to Palestine, Ohio, make sure everything was clean afterwards. And you know what they did? They didn't actually do that. It was not clean afterwards. Everything was still poison.
See, this doesn't surprise me. This doesn't surprise me at all.
The regulatory agencies don't actually do what they're claiming to do. They just tell people that's what they're doing, and people put false hope into it, and then they all, in the end, get the punished for it. The people get punished for it, not the companies, not the regulatory agencies, not the government, nobody who's supposed to be in control of these
when
things.
They do something, it's usually politically motivated or financially motivated by somebody who's going to benefit, right?
Yes.
And this is exactly, I think, what we're seeing right here with this exact case that you've brought up. Somebody's benefiting.
Mm-hmm. And it's not the people.
The polluters.
Yeah.
The polluters.
Yep.
And the same polluters have poisoned so much of the ocean that the oceans are now getting dead and hot. Stagnant water and massive storms like the one that's hit, Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas, blasted all, 30 inches of rain in one day. That's directly from the polluters. Mm-hmm. And they are lobbying, where do you all stand, libertarians? Where do libertarians stand on Project 2025?
I haven't read it because it's...
If it's government, we're against it.
It's right, yeah. So basically, I haven't read it because I think it's just some guy's garbage, right? That some guy wrote and then tried to claim it was Trump's, but I don't even know.
Garbage.
Yeah, I mean, basically, here's the thing. Libertarians believe that you shouldn't use laws are violence, right? I mean, that's what backs laws up, and every law is violence, and we're against the use of violence to achieve our social and political objectives. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that there shouldn't be liability when people,
Yes, people should be held accountable,
right.
But having these regulatory agencies be the ones that are supposed to oversee these things and they don't actually work is a problem because now it's not being overseen by anyone.
Right. And
when a private sector could do
and
the
the
job
liabilities
better.
are usually limited. So for example, with healthcare, for example, is a great example with the drug companies. When you are vaccinated for, all sorts of different vaccinations, the drug companies aren't liable for the percentage. There's always going to be a percentage of people who react badly and end up, dying or having
can't do anything about it.
Injuries, right? There's a cap on the liability that you can sue over, and not only can you not sue them for your losses, but you are basically getting money from a fund that was set aside to achieve to pay out those whatever liabilities exist. So get rid of the liability and get rid of the agency behind it. Problem solved.
No, it isn't, because it was called tort reform when Ronald Reagan and George Bush were putting that stupid idea forward that you got to put a cap on damages, that no matter how bad you got injured, the cap was $250,000. If you had a brain injury and you were going to be in a coma and walking in a drooling mess for the rest of your life when you were 20 to 90, you could spend millions.
Yeah.
But $250,000 is what they called tort reform. And they've cheated America now for 30, 40 years with that tort reform crap that you're
Am I missing something? Are we not agreeing with
I
him?
feel like we all are agreeing.
I think we're all in agreement on this. Get rid of the liability cap.
Yeah, it's not that there needs to be no regulation. It's that the regulatory bodies are not actually doing it.
Well, why do we need the regulatory bodies if they're not doing their job anyway? We just get rid of them and put and re-enable and stop putting liability caps on companies so that they're protected from the damages that they cause.
Correct. The regulation needs to come organically through the private sector and actual incentives and actual punishments for not doing the things that you need to be doing, and not through these government regulatory agencies, which are all just influenced by, corporations paying money to these regulatory agencies.
This is the funny thing.
Politicians.
So he's clearly coming from the left. And we're not coming from the right. We're coming from a libertarian perspective that nobody else seems to understand, because they're so often used to arguing with people on the right.
I feel like,
and it's like we're actually agreeing with you on most of this stuff. Other than that, maybe we are disagreeing that the regulator shouldn't be done away with, but for the most part, we're mostly in agreement that the liability caps are an issue and they should be done away with,
and that the system is not working.
Right, and the system is not working.
Well, when you're describing me, you were describing me as from the left. I take exception to that. I say that I'm a 1776 conservative that doesn't want America to be turned into a colony for polluters, or turned into a colony for scam artists that suck all of the money out of town as soon as it's made and send it over to the Cayman Islands. I want there to be local economics. That's a big standard of 1776. And when these corporations come into town, they knew not to give a corporate license to a company for over 2 counties. They didn't want railroads going from sea to shining sea with no regulations, because they could have faulty bearings, they could have, weather conditions and strata conditions. So what you're talking about with regulations is really the standards of science, weights and measures, weights and sciences. The scientific standards is where the law comes in. And when a railroad company decides to run their engine bearings so that they spark for 20 miles and then cause a derailment that causes billions of dollars worth of damage, and people have that railroad company has actually got the gall to almost double the amount of lobbying money rather than actually getting the place cleaned up.
So it sounds
and they're making a mockery of America.
It sounds like the regulatory bodies who are supposed to inspect and keep these things in the proper working order are not doing their job.
This is better left to the private industry to fix, but there needs to be the way it should be working is there should be insurance to protect against the liabilities that are obviously going to exist in order to prevent the company from actually getting out of their liabilities. But what then happens is the insurance company would say, hey, it's going to cost you 3 times as much if you don't double line your what do you call them, the tankers, I guess. Yeah.
Tank cars, yeah. And as a matter of fact, thinking about those floods just the other day, imagine there was a whole railroad train of those tank cars hit by a wall of flood. And all of a sudden those tank cars are bouncing down a creek or a river. Just horrible to imagine how much of the ocean could get poisoned that way, that entire river. Then they bust open. And
this happens all the time. This is the funny thing. You're talking about stuff that happens all the time, all around the world.
BP oil.
Like this isn't something that's like, oh, like we heard about the Pennsylvania, I believe, tanker, spill here recently, but this is not really rare. This happens all the time. Maybe it doesn't happen in Pennsylvania all the time, but it happens all over the world. Constantly it's happening. And this is despite the regulations.
Thank you for the call. So we have other people online, but basically if the regulatory bodies are not actually doing their job, then why are they still there? You can say, yes, we need regulations, but obviously we don't actually have any. We just have security theater.
There's no accountability. Like, why would you do your job if you can just get away with like pretending to do your job, right? And this is what these regulatory bodies are basically do. They're pretending to do their job.
It's not that I want a lawless world of poisons and everyone dying. It's that if there's going to be some type of safety measures put in place, they need to be real, actual safety measures and not pretend play government safety measures
and based on science,
actually do it.
Yeah, not some fictional threat or something of that nature.
Right. Is it really a regulation if they're like, well, you have to do this, this, and this unless somebody pays us money so that you don't have to do it? Like, that's not a real regulation. It's not real. Okay, so we're going to go to Dave Ridley. Hi, Ridley.
Hey, yeah, I have an update on the Alaska Independence Party.
Oh, yes. Tell us about.
An update. I'm not sure it's about the AIP per se, only that there was a gentleman from the Alaska Independence Movement who was on our call. There was a sort of a summit of independence movements around the world. It was just an electronic summit that happened a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
How did it go?
And he was one of the. Oh, it was fun. It was about 3 hours, maybe 3.5 hours. I listened to the whole thing. I stayed there for maybe 2.5 hours of it live. It was fun.
Is there some place that people go in and listen to the summit?
Yeah, calexitnow.org. I think calexitnow.org.
I bet if you just look up CalExit, you'll find it too. If that's not like.
Correct.
Yeah.
Anyway, this gentleman, he called himself Pete Peterson, which is strange because when I look up Pete Peterson, I get an Alaska politician that doesn't sound like he's pro-independence, but maybe this guy's changed his mind or something. But he called himself Pete Peterson, and he said that just when he was giving his presentation, he just kind of mentioned offhandedly that around September 20th, someone tried to run him over his politics.
Wow.
So one of the ways that independence movements can make themselves stronger is if they always kind of have each other's back. Like, right, if something happened, if somebody tried to run me over, I would feel really good about it if someone from the Alaska Independence Party called a talk radio show and told 100,000 people about it, right?
Yeah.
So we need to publicize it anytime someone attacks an American secessionist physically.
Yeah, I agree with you. That needs to be blasted out on the airwaves so people know that people are trying to shut up others.
I feel like this is something we do, I want to say 7 days a week, 365 days a year, but it's like 5 days a week now or 4 days a week.
Four.
Yeah.
Oh, 5 if you count the podcast.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But again, when I Googled him, I couldn't match up the name I was getting with a definite person. But how many Pete Petersons can there be in Alaska, right? So I don't know. I couldn't find any information about him on the AIP website or the AKIP website. The Alaska Independence Party is akip.org.
Maybe it wasn't actually like reported on either by anybody.
I'm sure it wasn't, because so many people, they're just so helpless. They don't know how powerful it is when they can report something that the government has done to them or something that pro-government factions have done to them.
Yeah, so there's also the issue of unfortunately, despite the fact that we have the internet, it's kind of got limited reach in some respects, unless you've got a major outlet of some kind that you're connected to, like, Dave, you're connected to Free Talk Live, in some respects, people here, But a lot of people, they're not, right? Like they don't know their local reporter if they even have one. They don't have anything to amplify their voice.
Well, there's something else that this brings up is the fact that I guess around the year 2000, I'm not sure the exact details. There was an Alaska Independence Party made quite a bit of progress in the 90s. I believe they had a governor that was like at least an honorary member or something. And he was kind of like Alaska's Craig Benson, right? And he, the governor, it wasn't something that happened to the governor, but the leader of the Alaska Independence Party died mysteriously. It would have been around 2000, I think. And it happened apparently 2 weeks before he was going to give an address at the United Nations.
I feel like that happens a lot to people who are outspoken on things that some may not want to be spoken about.
It's interesting. We have this impression that only only Russia goes out there and like kills people off. But
do we?
Well, we hear about it more, right?
Oh.
In the media, at least in the mainstream media, we hear about the Russians killing people off.
I feel like that's changing now because people like.
But there's a lot of mysteriously died people in other parts of the world as well, especially the United States.
Yeah.
Now, how can we know whether or not it's just coincidence or not? And that's what they're relying on.
I feel like the visibility of that has changed significantly, especially since Epstein didn't kill himself.
Yeah. We have, Epstein's is a good example, but there's other ways they kill people off without actually killing them off, like making false sexual accusations, things of that nature. The U.S. government loves to do that against people.
They do love to do that. There's like a book of like a rule book of how they go about these things. They try to make you an outcast. They try to humiliate you. They try to put you in jail. They try to actually kill you. Like they have a plethora of ways of dealing with problems.
Oh yeah, I mean we've seen that firsthand at Free Talk Live with Ian. They tried to claim he was some sort of pedophile or whatever, and there was no evidence behind
unfounded,
that.
So then
totally
they moved
unfounded.
On to the next phase.
They failed at that.
Yep.
They tried to they raided the studios a couple of times. Then the federal government came in and basically made up a bunch of false claims in regards to cryptocurrency that was within the law, arguably within the law.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yep. They keep doing things until they find the thing that works.
Yep.
To get the end result they want.
Well, to clarify too, this wasn't just a mysterious death. It was apparently a mysterious murder. This Alaska Independence guy who died.
There are a lot of mysterious murders. I did a story not that long ago about this woman who was connected to some politician. She killed herself by stabbing herself in the back a bunch of times.
In
the back of the neck.
That doesn't seem like that's how you would kill yourself.
Yeah, the police were like, yep, it was definitely a suicide. And they shut it down.
The back?
And it was 20 years later now that they're finally allowing the family to appeal the death cause decision. So hopefully Pete Peterson is safe after this person tried to run him over.
Yeah, I mean, that's the name I wrote down when I was listening to him. But again, I couldn't connect that name with definite independence activist. So maybe I wrote it down wrong. Maybe there's something else I'm missing. The internet search is taking me nowhere. But the Alaska independence representative at the meeting definitely did claim that that someone tried to run him over.
Yeah, I mean, there's also shadow banning is a real thing, and I believe you, Dave, were shadow banned, if I'm not mistaken, on YouTube, right?
I think 4 times now, and I still am.
Yeah. So, yep.
It depends on how you count it, but yeah, there would be like a moment every 5 years or something where I'd look at my total views for the month, and suddenly I would be going from 20,000 views a day to 6,000 views a day, and then it was down to 2,000 views a day, and then it was 100 views a day, or 500 views a day, or something like that. And I was still. This was before I started reducing my content. I reduced the content as a result of the deplatforming.
Yep, that's just another way for them to keep you quiet.
Well, it's like Sun Tzu said, though, you don't want to be a glacier that's moving a boulder forward over a period of 500 years. You want to be like water. So that means doing things that still work, and talk radio still works. And, if I want to get the message out about something, I call talk radio now instead of using the Riddler Report.
Yep. Well, yeah, because they can't shadow ban the airwaves.
Or it's a lot harder anyway.
Thanks for the call, Ridley. And you can find more of Ridley at ridleyreport.com. This is Free Talk Live. Call in at 603-283-6160.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. More than 110 people are known to have died, and at least 600 people are missing across multiple US states after Hurricane Helene. President Joe Biden says he plans to visit areas hit in the coming days, but does not want his trip to delay getting supplies to the affected people.
There's nothing like wondering, is my husband, wife, son, daughter, mother, father alive? And many more who remain without electricity, water, food, and communications. Homes and businesses have washed away in an instant. I want them to know we're not leaving until the job is done. I also want you to know I'm committed to traveling to the impacted areas as soon as possible, but I've been told that it would be disruptive if I did it right now. We will not do that at the risk of diverting or delaying any of the response assets needed to deal with this crisis.
The United Nations Security Council has approved the extension of a multinational security support mission to Haiti for another year. The Council had already authorised a Kenyan-led international security mission to assist the Caribbean country to help restore order against the ongoing gang violence last year. On Monday, the United States requested the mission be changed to a full-blown peacekeeping operation, but China and Russia opposed that move. Jody Jacobs reports from the United Nations in New York.
After more than 6 drafts of the resolution, it was finally put to a vote and adopted unanimously in the Security Council on Monday morning. The contentious issue was a paragraph asking for a plan to transform the security mission into a formal UN peacekeeping operation. But this received backlash from China and Russia, who say the environment in Haiti is not conducive for a fully fledged peacekeeping operation. The current security mission to Haiti, while authorized by the UN Security Council, is not a United Nations operation, and countries voluntarily provide money and personnel. Haitian leaders last week warned of the worsening insecurity in the country despite the partial deployment of the security mission. It supports the US request for a peacekeeping operation. Jody Jacobs, New York.
The man accused of plotting to kill former US President Donald Trump at his Florida golf course has pleaded not guilty to 5 criminal counts, including attempting to assassinate a major presidential candidate. US correspondent Kate Fisher reports.
58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ruth faces 5 charges, including the assassination attempt, gun charges, and assaulting an officer. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of life in prison. US Secret Service agents spotted the barrel of his high-powered rifle in the bushes outside the Trump International Golf Club on September the 15th. They fired at him before he fled the scene. He did not fire any shots, but law enforcement say his weapon was loaded with 11 rounds of ammunition. Kate Fisher.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
Talk Live, talk radio you control. Call in at 603-283-6160. Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny Liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com.
I just ordered 3 new Free Talk Live hoodies myself, actually, the other day.
Did you? I got to get one, and I want the Circular Reasoning shirt. I still haven't done it.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I still haven't done it, but I need to. So we do have calls on the line waiting for us. So we're first going to go to David in New Mexico. Hi, David.
Did you hear that cow?
I didn't hear the cow. No.
Oh, well, you will in a minute. She's going to do it again. That one.
You have cows there?
Yeah, they're in the yard. I don't have the gate open, so they walk in and.
Oh, I
do hear it. Do you have a farm, David?
No, I live on you know what open range is, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Different.
And a minute ago. Yeah, it's a regular zoo. A minute ago, I was standing here when I was on a hold, and I shut up. Sometimes it's a pain in the butt to try to sleep. I was standing here and I felt these little feet and this furry belly standing on my foot. You'd have loved it, Lori.
Was it Templeton?
No, it was Choopy, the littlest one.
He has rats that come and hang out with him.
Oh, I didn't need to hear this.
Like wild rats that come and hang out.
She came. Actually, she came to get I got the dishwater in the pan on the ground again, and
how do you know if they're?
A drink of water.
How do you know if they're she's or he's?
Just by if they're feminine looking or masculine looking.
I didn't know that rats.
I didn't know you could tell the difference easily.
Yeah, I didn't know you could tell the difference. I've had like pet rats before. They were all boys, so I don't know if there really is a difference because I didn't have any girl ones.
It's not like it's obvious, but there's a slight difference, and if you pay attention, you can usually tell. But she came to get a drink of water, and so after she got off my foot, she was hanging by her back legs from the rim of the dishpan with her mouth down in the water to drink.
Mm-hmm. Is this a dishpan specifically for them?
Well, there's one that is specifically for them, but for some reason they seem to like the one that's got actual soap in it better.
Weird.
So weird. That must be, maybe there's a scent in it. I don't know.
Wait. Am I understanding you correctly? You leave a pan of water out for the rats?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're my pets. You leave a pan of water out for your cats and your dogs.
Okay, are these rats in cages? I thought you said, but
no, we the people are the rats in cages. These guys are wild and free. No tax collector comes around for them.
Okay.
David's gonna move to New Hampshire. When he gets here, he's gonna have Boobos all over him because he hangs out with rats.
All right.
I love Boobos.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of Boobos, especially never mind.
I don't even know how to respond to this. This is just, yeah.
David lives an interesting life.
Yeah, clearly.
Well, that same one, Choopy, I was laying in bed. I told you this a week or two ago. I wake up in the middle of the night. Shut up. Because that calf got separated from its mom, and so it's wandering around calling for its mom.
That seems like a good way to get eaten by something.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, except for there's no wolves here, and the coyotes aren't big enough to do the job.
Yeah, coyotes there are tiny.
Yeah.
Where is this that you
He's in New Mexico.
New Mexico, okay.
Same thing. Mexico, New Mexico, what's different?
One's newer.
Mexico's less corrupt than New Mexico. Speaking of, actually, it's true. I was going to start telling you some excerpts, factual excerpts from the life of Billy the Kid.
Oh, good. Tell us.
You can start with, and it would warrant some easy searches by people because I can't tell you the whole. I mean, there are literally, I've read like thousands of pages of history. But if you start with like what they call in New Mexico the Santa Fe Ring, if you were to do a search, Google or otherwise, for the Santa Fe Ring, you would find a guy named Catron, which is the county right over there is still named after him, even though he literally committed every crime in the book that government commits, up to and including murder. Many murders. So this Catron, he was he held every different kind of. He was a senator. He was a attorney general. Attorney general. Well, it was back when it was a territory before it became a state, and then he was a senator after it became a state. But he held all these different political positions, and he used his power to steal money. And at one point, he was the largest landowner that the United States has ever known. He had 6 million acres in his own name. He got it by stealing it from when New Mexico. The people here, the land here, belonged to Spain and then to Mexico. When Mexico became independent from Spain, and then the United States took it from them in a war, and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo prescribed that the land there were landowners here, private parties that had like 2 million acres in their own name that was given to them as a land grant by the King and Queen of Spain, and they, under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, they got to keep their land. But they had to register it with the United States federal government, and so this attorney Catron, he was a public figure, but he was also a private attorney. He managed to get these landowners that had like 2 million acres of their own, and there were dozens of them, to appoint him as their attorney to do their transactions with the United States federal government in order to keep the 2 million acres in their private possession. And in the process of doing that, what he did is he in doing their paperwork, whatever he did, he swindled them out of their land and took their land from them and accumulated, like I said, 6 million acres in his own name, and then would sell that land to homesteaders at he got it for pennies on the dollar and then would sell it for full price. And so he made, a lot of money in a criminal fashion. And that's just like the tip of the iceberg.
It seems like out in the wild, wild west, they really are proud of all of their criminals of the past. Like when I lived in Arizona, there was a lot of like hero worship over the guys who were committing crimes.
Well, like which ones though? Because the ones that they're like the Billy the Kid, actually, he was like Robin Hood. He technically may have done criminal acts, but he did them in retaliation for the criminal acts that were done to him and other people. And so, like, which ones are you talking about?
I lived in Tombstone.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of just basic gunslinger
like
hero
who?
worship. Doc Holliday and Big Nose Kate and what were the Earp brothers? Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, the Earps.
The Earps.
Big Nose Kate ran the brothel, right?
Yeah, she ran the brothel.
And Doc Holliday and the Earps, they basically kept law and order in the town, and they may have committed, various minor criminal acts. You can name them if you have them, because I can't. But they did kind of keep law and order in the town.
Kinda, yeah.
Right. And
for a short period of time.
Right. Yeah. They're all married to hookers. The Earps. They brought them from. They were in Dodge City. I think the Earps came from Dodge City.
What about Doc Holliday? He didn't really do any good service to the community.
Sure he did. He was a dentist. He was born in the plantation South, and went to whatever kind of dental school was available in that day, and which was not very much really.
Mm-hmm.
But he basically pulled people's teeth. I don't think they did a whole lot of filling of teeth. I think they did mainly just pulling. They
would just get you drunk and rip your teeth out, right?
Yeah. So he did that. And
I think dentists of the time were also like, we'll sew you up if you get shot too. Or was that barbers?
Yeah.
I know barbers would be like surgeons, and
Mm-hmm.
at least in some, like if you got like some sort of growth, they would remove them. They would just with
Can you
their
imagine,
knife. Yeah.
like, trim me up and also sew me up.
Yep. Like literally while you're getting a haircut. Yep. Can you also get that wart off my back? It's like, oh my god.
Hence the
crazy
with that red, white, blue barber's pole. That was symbolic for the medical work that they did, along with whatever the three colors meant something.
What was Big Nose Kate's service to the community? Having the brothel?
Well, hell yeah, providing good times for Jews.
That is a service to the community.
It is the oldest job.
Yep, oldest profession.
Mm-hmm.
Keep the peace, keep the men happy, so they're not out doing as much damage as they would if they were cranky.
Raping and pillaging.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like there was a lot of that going on too.
Yeah, I'm sure there was.
So.
Yeah, probably less of it though. If there was a paid.
The more civilized ones would use the prostitutes.
There was rumors that Billy the Kid was at the shootout in Tombstone, but it's unfounded. Unfounded.
What year was the shootout at OK? It was October. The date was October 26th, but I don't remember the year. Do you remember the year?
I don't remember. I haven't been there in a long time. It's been like 4 years since we left.
Well, you're there right now. All you got to do is go.
I'm looking it up for you.
OK. And just type in a C and bam, corral, and then hit yep. And
it was 1881.
Okay, well, Billy.
I should know because I had to like recite this because I worked at one of the places out there. So.
Well, if you believe that Billy the Kid was actually killed, he was killed on July 14 of 1881. So what date I already said October 26th.
October 26th.
So if Billy the Kid was his death was faked, then he could have been there. But I don't know why he would have been. I mean, if he was fleeing, he needed. If he stayed alive, he needed to flee New Mexico territory, and going to Arizona territory would have been better than nothing, but not as good as going to Mexico. There also was.
Well, I mean, back then the laws were that as long as you left the state, like you could kill somebody and leave the state, and you wouldn't.
Well, that's the problem because he killed somebody in Arizona in like the first guy that he killed, Cahill, Windy Cahill, a blacksmith in what town was that? Anyway, he killed a guy, and there was a warrant. They probably would have hung him but he escaped from the jail and fled back to New Mexico. And so there probably was still a murder warrant for his arrest in Arizona. So it wouldn't have been a good idea to go back to Arizona where there was already a murder warrant for him.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, they didn't have extradition yet.
Yeah, there was no extradition. Like you leave the state and that's it.
Yep.
You're free to go.
Honestly, it seems like a good solution to me.
Yeah. So he could have been there if he and Garrett arranged to fake his death, which is another controversy whether or not he was actually killed or whether his death was faked and he took off to some other place since they were going to hang him in New Mexico.
He could have been going to Tombstone to meet up with, people to go head out to, where did they go afterwards? California to make their riches, or was it Alaska?
You're talking about gold? That was previously. That was the 49ers in like 1849 and afterward.
No, after Tombstone, they left Tombstone, like all these guys, the Earps and stuff, and they went to, I think it was California or Alaska, one of the two, to make their money.
Probably was Alaska because California hit in like 1849, 1850.
It must have been
the
Alaska.
Klondike. So once again, so Google Klondike gold rush and see what year that was. I'll race you.
Okay. It was 1896.
Huh?
1896.
96?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, he could have gone to Alaska to stake a claim.
Mm-hmm. So what else about Billy the Kid should we know? Bonnie the Kid.
Bonnie the Kid. Well, basically he started his life. He was born in New York City to Irish immigrants, and they moved to Indiana, and then they moved to Kansas, and then they moved to Denver area. And his mom had tuberculosis, so they moved farther southwest because it was the same as Doc Holliday. Same reason that Doc Holliday ended up in Arizona. Same reason that Billy the Kid's mother came to New Mexico is because she had
the consumption.
Consumption, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then she died when he was like 14, and he didn't know his real father. His real father might have been killed in the Civil War, or he might have been illegitimate. Nobody knows for sure. But his stepfather rejected him and kicked him out of the house when he was at 14, which kind of turned him into a delinquent because he had really no other choice.
Could you imagine, like, your mom just died of tuberculosis, and now the only other person you have to depend on as a child kicks you out?
Yeah. And the first thing that he got in trouble for was stealing food. He stole some butter and got in trouble for that. I think he got arrested for that. And then after that, he stole some laundry, probably for something to wear and to resell some clothing, probably. And he got thrown in the jail. And he thought, I think the rumor is the sheriff was just trying to teach him a lesson by throwing him in the jail, and he wasn't really going to end up going through court and going to prison, and which could have happened, but he didn't know that, and so he escaped. He was good at escaping, so he escaped that jail and went on the run and became a fugitive outlaw, because he thought he was going to go to prison for a long time if he didn't, and then when you become a fugitive outlaw, then you end up having to commit other crimes to survive, and then you get in deeper trouble, and it just gets deeper and deeper. And so it comes down to that. Well, he said it in his own words. Billy the Kid said that he just wanted to live his life, a normal life, but he said they wouldn't let me.
They them those.
The powers of, pardon?
They them those.
Yeah. So nothing has changed, right?
Mm-hmm, yeah. So, but you said he was a Robin Hood. Was he stealing and giving to others?
Yeah, essentially, he was defending others, because what he would do is like there's that famous when they formed what they called the Regulators,
mm-hmm.
which they borrowed that term from that was a pre-Revolutionary War not vigilante, but a group that defended the colonists from the British, and so they reused that name, Regulators, and so there's a letter that was signed Regulator, although it's obvious that Billy the Kid wrote it because it's in his handwriting, and he sent it to the brother-in-law of the Catron guy, Catron, Catron,
mm-hmm.
Thomas Benton Catron. He sent the letter to the brother-in-law who ran one of Catron's ranches, telling him that I guess I should say, first of all, before these Regulators formed and he sent this letter, the Santa Fe Ring, this Catron guy, he ran it along with other people, but he was the top guy. They had done things like send real outlaws to little towns in New Mexico that were not doing what they were told, and they literally committed massacres against men, women, and children, and they would just go right into town and just shoot anybody they saw,
mm-hmm.
and then they would burn their houses and their buildings and shoot any livestock.
Yep.
And so in retaliation for the Santa Fe Ring and Catron doing that, the Regulators formed, and then Billy wrote that letter, manifesto sort of, and said that from this point forward, anything done to the people will be done in kind to Catron, his property. So Billy, what they would do is when they rustled cattle, they were stealing them from Catron, who was going around doing everything up to and including massacring men, women, and children.
Mm-hmm.
So he would steal those cattle he was stealing from the criminals. So that's why I said like Robin Hood.
I see. Well, thanks for the call, David. It was interesting. I liked all of that Billy the Kid knowledge.
Cool.
Definitely. Nothing I knew.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that either. We do have another call on the line. It's Sarah in New Mexico. Hi, Sarah.
Well, he does have a entertainment value, don't you think so?
I like
David. He does
David.
make you crack up. And I did hear that finally, that cow in the background.
Yep.
So, yeah. I just want to say I'm really proud of myself. I think I got one more registration, and I think got one more vote at the UNIM. I was just sitting at the bench, and I was telling everybody, the UNIM sub is going to be open to vote, October 19th. And he's like, really? Well, this guy was a freshman. He just came here. I'm like, they do? So I told them the calendar dates. And I said, did you know students can register to vote as soon as they come here? It doesn't matter what school you go to in New Mexico. They just want to, give them an opportunity so they don't have to do absentee ballot within their state. I met a couple of students that said, I have to do absentee in Texas. I'm going to do absentee. I said, no, you don't have to. You could just vote right here at the sub.
Do you ask
Union Building?
Do you ask these people if they are knowledgeable at all about the issues before you send them over to register to vote, or do you just tell them to go register to vote?
Well, you know what? I have to be I'm open to libertarians, Green Party, Red Party, Pink Party. It's like, no, I don't talk about the issues. I don't have to, because most of the students are Democrats. I'm talking to, for every 8 person I talk to, 7 of them are Democrats. So it's like a shoe-in. So, I think that kid looked like a Democrat. So I showed them where to go vote. And I told them about the Alvarado Square, where to go walk in. There's a building you can walk in and register to vote. And then they have that QR code, the little code that takes you to the website, and now you could do online registration. I did not know what that little thing that came up. It's like, what is this QR code, or what, a computer thing? And I was ready to throw it out because I don't know how to use that kind of stuff. I still have a dumb phone, right? You have to have a service on the phone.
Yep.
So he took a picture of it, and it went right onto that site, and it began to ask all the names, the address. So you are registering online. That's the new thing. He goes, I got it. So I think he definitely had to be a Democrat,
What does a Democrat look like? What does a Democrat look like? I don't understand.
Well, I mean, I could tell by the, if you have locks,
blue hair?
dreadlocks. Well, the Republicans, they got their certain kind of attitude and look about them. Like a Democrat, he's got locks, and he was black. He was a black kid. And usually you happen to be Democrat.
You just told me yesterday that you went to that church with the black preacher, and the preacher was a Republican.
Right. So you can't always tell by looking, but I'm safe in. Well, I also that in Rio Rancho, I was talking to the guy from Rio Rancho. Democrats have to call the Democrat, because it's there's more Republicans there, so you can't mess up. You have to get that, because if you help everybody out, you're going to bring out the Republican vote. So over there.
So are you targeting only people who look like Democrats to tell them to go register?
No, I really don't know who they are. I can't really tell.
I know, but are you guessing if somebody looks Republican? Are you not telling them to go?
Well, I could kind of feel them out, but usually they don't even come over to me. Because they pretty much know that I've been rapping. I'm yakking. I mean, people know that I'm a Democrat. I have talked about it. There's no Republicans left up in the roundhouse to do any, their policy. There's nothing left for them to stop anything like silent voting. That's Democrat policy.
Thank you for your call, Sarah. This has been Free Talk Live. You can call in when we are on the air and get on the air with us about anything you would like to talk about. Thanks for listening.
Membership has its privileges. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Are you a AAA member? Nice to have, just in case, but think beyond breakdowns and dead batteries. At AAA.com, you can peruse discounts on tickets to concerts, games, and movies and amusement parks, including Disney World and Universal. When you book a hotel room, look for a special rate. And keep scrolling for Office Max and Office Depot and Omaha Steaks, and lots of restaurants have member discounts too. Ditto AARP, who's